Chapter 3577. Originally, everyone's attention was on Lei Wuxing and the others, thinking about the opportunity. As for the confrontation between Zi Chen and the Sacred Star Tribe, no one paid attention to it anymore. Hu Huanshan's words made him the focus of everyone's attention. It must be nearby. Hu Huanshan said loudly, the real opportunity is around here. This place is just a cover. He's just using it to stall for time. Hu Huanshan pointed at himself and said excitedly, everyone, you have to believe me. The real opportunity is nearby. As he said that, he looked at Zi Chen provocatively. Zi Chen was stunned and a little dumbfounded. Wasn't his imagination a little too rich? However, the change in his expression in the eyes of everyone gave them the feeling that their guess was true. Therefore, some people began to take out command flags and set them on the other mountains. The command flags shone brightly, covering an area of thousands of feet. In a moment, the area where Zi Chen set his flag was occupied by command flags. Among them, Hu Huanshan set down one, Lei Zhenghong set down two, and the others were all command flags of external forces. In the blink of an eye, the area of thousands of miles was occupied. Seeing the light shields of the command flags, Zi Chen was completely stunned. Lei Wuxing and the others were even more confused. They had just arrived and didn't know what was going on. Why was everyone setting down their flags? He led a group of experts and descended from the sky, landing beside Zi Chen and asking, what's going on? Zi Chen spread his hands and said, I'm not sure either. Where's the opportunity? Lei Wuxing asked again. Zi Chen pointed around. Under such circumstances, do you think there's still an opportunity? So, that guy was right? Lei Wuxuang asked anxiously. She didn't stop all the way and rushed over as fast as she could. She didn't expect to hear such news. Zi Chen didn't say anything. Instead, he looked around and his expression changed slightly. Hu Huanshan was very proud of himself. Even though he had been tricked by Zi Chen 9 times, as long as he obtained this opportunity, everything was worth it. The experts of the Holy Thunder clan landed around the mountain peak and looked at each other in dismay. Wait a moment, Zi Chen said. What are we waiting for? Lei Wuxing asked. Wait for dawn. After he finished speaking, Zi Chen fell silent. As for the original Saint Star clan, all of them had already left. They didn't dare to make a move before, and now that Lei Wuxing had personally come, it was even more impossible for them to make a move. Speaking of which, as the leader of the Holy Thunder clan, Lei Wuxing would never support the Holy Star clan like Lei Zhenghongtian. The people of the Holy Thunder clan appeared to be very quiet within a radius of 300 feet. However, the surrounding areas were very lively. The flags were casually placed everywhere as if they didn't cost anything. Of course, no one fought, because no one knew if there would be a fortuitous opportunity under their flag. Sometimes, someone would look at Zi Chen, but after seeing that Zi Chen was cultivating, they would ignore him. Because the nearby areas were all occupied, there was no place to place the flags. Lei Wuxing and the others could only wait here. The night passed quickly. According to the previous agreement, the place occupied by Zi Chen was considered to be guarded. If it wasn't for Hu Huanshan's interruption yesterday, a battle would have broken out in the end, and it might have been very tragic. Speaking of which, the other party had done a good thing. Of course, Lei Wuxing's arrival was also very important. This gave him enough confidence to reveal the biggest secret. Seeing Zi Chen stand up, Lei Wuxuang, who was lazily leaning on the side in a daze, turned his head to look at him and asked, now it's time to say it, right? The opportunity is right under our feet. Zi Chen pointed to the mountain peak below and said, according to the agreement, this place is occupied by us. What? Everyone's expression changed, and they felt that it was unbelievable. Yesterday, they already knew what Zi Chen had done. Could it be that he really exposed the biggest opportunity in this place to everyone? Are you sure? Lei Wuxuang stood up, still somewhat in disbelief. Very sure. Get someone here. Zi Chen said in a deep voice, the opportunity in this place is no small matter. Get more people here. Looking at Zi Chen's serious expression, Lei Wuxing nodded. Obviously, Zi Chen wouldn't joke about this kind of thing. Next, a large number of experts from the Holy Thunder Clan gathered at this place. In just 2 days, all the members of the Holy Thunder Clan who were in the depths of the place had gathered here. Of course, because of the conflict between Hu Huanshan and Zi Chen, Lei Wuxing left Hu Huanshan to his own devices and didn't call his people over. Lei Zhenghong had already lost the qualification to participate in the trial, so he was no longer on the list of people to be recruited. At this time, the existences of the other forces had already scouted the surroundings, but didn't find anything unusual. However, the gathering of the experts from the Holy Thunder Clan still made everyone very puzzled. If you think that these people are not safe, then I will provoke more people to come over, Lei Wuxing said. More people? Zi Chen was very surprised. After all, this time, there were many areas that needed manpower. The number of people from the Holy Thunder Clan that came was already very terrifying. In view of the many resources found this time, the Holy Thunder Clan intends to send 1/10 of their strength. Those experts are already on their way and will be here soon. Hearing Lei Wuxing's words, Zi Chen gasped, and there was a hint of shock in his eyes. The Holy Thunder Clan had developed for many years and had countless holy spirits. This time, they actually sent 1/10 of their experts to this place, which showed how much importance they attached to this place. In that case, Zi Chen was no longer in a hurry and decided to wait a little longer. This place was no small matter. As soon as they appeared, they might be besieged by other forces. Therefore, in the process of waiting, Zi Chen continued to explore other areas, which made Hu Huanshan even more proud. During this time, the existence of the Holy Star Clan came to negotiate. Naturally, it was for the immortal armor, but Lei Wuxing decisively refused. The reason he gave was that life and death were up to fate, and the spoils of war belonged to the winner. Lei Wuxing, who usually didn't ask about other things, was very strong this time. The people of the Holy Star Clan couldn't do anything to Lei Wuxing. At present, Lei Wuxing was the first among all the forces to arrive at this place with the highest leader. After many days of waiting, the number of holy spirits of the Holy Thunder Clan increased, which made people even more puzzled. With so many experts of the Holy Thunder Clan gathered, it was a kind of pressure for all the forces. Some people even secretly guessed that the people of the Holy Thunder Clan were preparing to forcibly attack the world ahead. Did they want to take the first credit? At this time, Zi Chen, who was still exploring other mountain ranges, returned to the original mountain peak. Under everyone's gaze, he used the Eye of Destruction. Chapter 3578. A huge ancient tree appeared on the top of the mountain. It was lush and verdant, reaching straight into the sky. An ancient aura spread out with the appearance of the ancient tree. Perceiving this aura, everyone's attention fell on the top of the mountain. For a moment, there were exclamations everywhere. The holy spirits in the distance flew over, and the tyrannical aura fluctuations filled the surroundings. Formation. Lei Wuxing, who had been ready for a long time, shouted, "Those who dare to trespass will be killed without mercy." Many holy spirits from the Holy Thunder Clan flew in all directions, and their auras were fully released. Countless lightning bolts shot up into the sky like countless thunder dragons. The scene was extremely spectacular. Their energy was not the same, but their essence was the same. They were all thunder holy spirits. Their eyes were as cold as lightning, and there was a real killing intent in their eyes. All the holy spirits stopped at the periphery, looking shocked. Hu Huanshan, didn't you say there was no opportunity there? Lei Hongtian was also blocked outside. At this moment, he looked at Hu Huanshan beside him, and his face gradually turned pale. Being questioned by Lei Hongtian, Hu Huanshan's face naturally did not look good. He had been tricked by Zi Chen 9 times. He thought he was right the 10th time, but he was still tricked. However, there was only a tree in front of them, and it looked a little old. There should be no opportunity there. Facing Lei Hongtian's accusation, he said in a deep voice, "Young Master Tian, don't worry. It's just a tree. There's no great opportunity. The reason why they made such a big fuss is actually for that city." Really? Lei Hongtian looked at him with doubt. Hu Huanshan said confidently, "I've been wrong 10 times. Will I be wrong 11 times in a row? This guy is just pretending to be mysterious." He's just trash. However, just as he finished speaking, Chen, who was at the top of the mountain, suddenly pointed his finger forward. Then, ripples appeared on the thick trunk of the tree. The ripples spread and became countless. As the countless ripples surged, a passage appeared from within. Hu Huanshan was stunned and quickly closed his mouth, unable to say anything. This slap in the face came too quickly. It's a world. Leijin Hongtian turned his head to look at Hu Huanshan. His teeth were clenched, and his anger was overflowing. Cries of surprise could be heard all around. The holy spirits on the periphery were in a commotion. Anyone who tries to enter the 300 zhong radius will be killed without mercy. Lei Wusheng's cold voice came from the peak of the mountain. On the other hand, Lei Wushuang tilted her head as her beautiful eyes sized up Chen. Her eyes were filled with curiosity. At this moment, she clearly understood why Chen was so cautious. What he discovered was no longer a mineral vein or a resource, but an unknown world. There might not be many resources here. But there could also be a limitless future. Perhaps, the soul-gathering crystal mine was here? Isn't your Holy Thunder clan a little too overbearing? A dissatisfied voice sounded. According to the rules, this place has already been occupied by us. Naturally, it's our territory. What do you mean by tyrannical? Lei Wushuang turned around and said coldly. Chen looked at the passage that appeared in the ancient tree. He turned back to Lei Ba and said, "You take some people in first. Remember to protect Lei Lan." Lei Ba was wearing an immortal armor. It was obtained by Chen when he killed the Holy Star clan a few days ago. He gave it to Lei Ba as a half-gift and half-exchange. Of course, Chen didn't believe that Lei Ba couldn't get the armor. But since he insisted on completing the deal, Chen naturally agreed. It was a way to make friends. Lei Ba, who had obviously become much closer to Chen, patted his chest and said, "Brother, don't worry. As long as I'm alive, your sister-in-law's life will definitely not be in danger." Chen was stunned when he heard that. What was this? Even the usually cheerful Lei Lan was caught off guard by Lei Ba's words. She blushed. "Don't talk nonsense to ruin my innocence." Chen waved his hand and said, "Lei Ba, you guys go in too. You must be careful this time." These people had followed Chen all the way to this place. They were absolutely loyal and reliable. Naturally, they couldn't miss this opportunity to explore and make contributions. "Sir, you're not going in?" Lei Ba, who was about to go on an adventure, asked with a surprised expression. Chen shook his head and said, "No, I'll guard outside." This time, not only would Chen not go in, even Lei Wusheng and Lei Wushuang wouldn't go in either. Compared to the unknown world ahead, the outside world needed more experts to guard it. In other words, the outside world was more dangerous. Chen and Lei Bai's people all walked into the passage. Following them were the people arranged by Lei Wusheng, who also entered one after another. In the blink of an eye, about half of the experts who came here had left. Only half of them were left to guard this place. Outside the crowd, due to the reduction of the Holy Thunder Clan's guards, the holy spirits of the various forces were in a commotion. The opportunity was clearly in front of them. They were unwilling to be indifferent to it. At this moment, many people were cursing Hu Huanshan in their hearts. If it wasn't for that idiot's nonsense last time, they might have already attacked this place. The commotion outside was getting more and more intense. A battle was about to break out. Under such circumstances, the Holy Thunder Clan obviously had to face all the forces. Chen's expression was indifferent. The holy talisman in his hand flew out and flew towards the sky. It was the furious thunder roar. Seeing the dozens of holy talismans flying in the sky, Lei Hongtian's already ugly expression became even more gloomy. After such a long time, he naturally knew where the holy talisman came from. It should have belonged to the Lei Zheng family, but it was given to Chen. Then, Chen made a great contribution. This time, the other teams of the Holy Thunder Clan were able to guard their respective areas because of the furious thunder roar. Chen had made another great contribution. As soon as the Holy Talisman was released, the power of thunder began to surge, but it did not shatter. Obviously, once the battle broke out, Chen would immediately use it to give the Holy Thunder Clan a strong support. In addition to Lei Wuxing, Lei Wuxuang, and Chen, who was wearing the Immortal King armor, the Holy Thunder Clan's strength was undoubtedly very strong. Because Chen had already shown his ability to break through armor a few days ago, only the other 17 Immortal King armors would be able to suppress him now. However, those people were guarding the periphery at this time. How could they make it in time? At this time, in the Holy Thunder Clan's camp, 17 leaders wearing Immortal King armors were all gathered here with respectful expressions. In front of them, a young man stood and spoke frankly to the leaders. It was the Holy Thunder Clan's ancestor. In such close contact with a sacred venerate of the Holy Thunder Clan, the leaders were very reserved. They only listened and did not speak. I believe you all know about the armor of the 18 Immortal King armors. The ancestor glanced at the leaders and said, if you want to get the real great opportunity, you can only get the armor of the 18 Immortal King armors. I called you here at this time to suggest that we join forces. The leaders looked at each other and still did not speak. The ancestor obviously did not listen to their opinions and continued, you should also know that the Immortal King armor of the Holy Thunder Clan is in Chen's possession. I believe he has the strength to have the Immortal King armor. At this time, the ancestor was discussing matters in the main hall of the camp. Outside, the experts of the Holy Thunder Clan were guarding the place in layers, nominally to ensure safety. However, outside the protection, the holy spirits who wanted to contact their leaders were as anxious as ants on a hot pan. During this time, they had sent a lot of messages, but their leaders did not give a single response or even an order. What's the hurry? Do you think something can happen here? A leader of the Sacred Thunder tribe said unhappily. Nothing happened here, but something happened in the depths, a holy spirit said anxiously. Even if it's a big matter, it has to wait until the meeting is over. At this moment, the group of anxious holy spirits seemed to have understood something. Chapter 3579. Chen did not know how great the opportunity here was, but he knew that it was extremely important. Therefore, when he mobilized many experts, he had to set up a trap in the periphery and leave the 17 Immortal King armors behind. Otherwise, when they came to the depths, even if he could not give up this place, he would definitely share it with them. He had worked hard to find this place of opportunity, so he was naturally unwilling to share it with other forces. As long as the 17 Immortal King armors were blocked, and they could not send orders, then the army outside would not be able to come. Even if it was only delayed for a few days, plus the time when the army went deep, it was enough for the Holy Thunder Clan to completely understand the situation in that unknown world. Lei Wuxing looked at Chen with some admiration in his heart. As expected of someone who had walked step by step from the 10,000 spirit realm. His wisdom and scheming were even more terrifying than many old monsters. Unknowingly, the interests of the Holy Thunder Clan were already the biggest. His sister Lei Wuxuang's beautiful eyes flashed continuously. She was very interested in Chen and had been sticking to him. The reinforcements of the Holy Thunder Clan were still arriving, and their numbers were increasing. After these people arrived, they would replace the original people to guard this place, and then those who were originally guarding the place would enter the world of the ancient tree to explore. Chen, the 3 strongest experts, still stayed on the mountain peak. The meeting of the bloodline ancestor lasted for 3 days. However, during these 3 days, the forces still did not come to a conclusion. Therefore, the meeting ended. Looking at the people leaving, a faint smile appeared on the bloodline ancestor's face. Outside, there were bursts of cheers, followed by the curses of the leaders. They would not dare to curse the Saint Venerable even if they had 10 times the courage. Naturally, they were cursing their subordinates. Why didn't they hurry up and arrange for people to enter the depths? 3 days had passed, and it would take a long time to reach the depths. Once they arrived, would there still be any gains? At the same time, the leaders also felt very wronged. A powerful Saint Venerable actually used such a method to scheme against them. What was this called? However, no matter how late it was, they still had to enter the depths. Lei Wuxing heard the news when the troops in the camp set off. He immediately waved his hand and signaled for everyone to enter the tunnel behind him. The surrounding holy spirits all walked in one after another. Then, Zi Chen turned around. Just when everyone thought that Zi Chen was going to enter, they saw Zi Chen wave his sleeve. Light flashed in his eyes, and the ancient tree and the entrance disappeared. Everyone was dumbfounded. Because after the ancient tree disappeared, this place looked exactly the same as before. During this time, many people used their eye techniques to investigate, but to no avail. Clearly, only Zi Chen's eye technique would be able to find the opportunity here. The holy spirits of the Holy Thunder Clan who had come here and those who had been recognized had all walked in. There were thousands of them. Under such circumstances, even if there was a great danger inside, they should be able to resist it if they worked together. Therefore, Zi Chen and the other two only needed to wait here. 7 days passed in the blink of an eye, and the holy spirits of the various powers finally arrived. The 17 immortal king armors in the lead were very eye-catching. After the various powers appeared, they headed straight in this direction. Zi Chen sat on the mountain peak and looked into the distance, ignoring the people who came. Lei Wushuang sat beside Zi Chen as she swung her spotlessly white legs. She merely glanced behind her before continuing to ask, "In that case, it wasn't easy for you to come to the Saint Spirit world." "It's not just not easy, it's simply a miracle." After recounting some of the past, Zi Chen said, "I've experienced countless life and death crises. Fortunately, my luck has always been good, and I've made it through." Then, he let out a low sigh and said, "No matter which world it is, it's actually the same. There are always all kinds of troubles and conflicts, but to put it bluntly, it's all about profit." Everything was for profit. Whether it was when he was weak back then, or now that he had become a holy spirit, this sentence was still valid. Lei Wushuang tilted her head and looked at Zi Chen. "I didn't expect you to be so experienced." The two of them could ignore the leaders, but Lei Wusheng couldn't. He stood up and looked at the leaders who were heading straight for this place and said, "Everyone, what's the matter?" At this time, Zi Chen was still chatting with Lei Wushuang and didn't pay attention to the people behind him. This area had been sealed again, and other than him, no one else could open it. "Lei Wusheng, you've gone too far this time," one of the leaders said coldly. "How so? Tell me about it." Lei Wusheng smiled faintly. The leader opened his mouth but didn't dare to say that the Holy Senior had plotted against them. The Holy Senior's status was extraordinary. According to the previous agreement, this is the territory of the Holy Thunder Clan, and our people have been guarding it for many days. As for your territory, it's around here. Lei Wusheng pointed at the surrounding mountains and said. The leaders' faces turned ugly, but Lei Wusheng's words made sense. Lei Wusheng, an agreement is an agreement, but some things are beyond the agreement. Another leader said, "The biggest opportunity here is in the hands of the Holy Thunder Clan. Don't you feel that it's hot to take it away so easily?" Lei Wusheng said indifferently, "It's our opportunity." "Of course, we don't feel that it's hot to take." Lei Wusheng, stop pretending. The opportunity is too big. I'm afraid the Holy Thunder Clan won't be able to take it all. The leader said coldly, "So, why don't you share the opportunity with us?" "Share? If you got the opportunity, would you share it?" Lei Wusheng asked coldly. "Of course. Our purpose for coming here is to share resources." When the leader spoke, the other leaders were silent. Obviously, they agreed. "What if I don't share it?" Lei Wusheng asked. The leader's gaze swept past Zi Chen and the other two. "Then unfortunately, we'll take the Holy Thunder Clan's immortal king armor and these 2 immortal armors. Speaking of which, as a leader, you can't even wear the immortal king armor. What kind of leader are you?" The leader pointed at Zi Chen and said disdainfully, "I think I'd better talk to this 4-star leader. Maybe he knows better than you. Kid, turn around and talk to me." Zi Chen, who had no intention of getting involved in this matter, didn't expect the flames of war to extend to him so quickly. He stood up and looked back at the leader who spoke. "Are you talking to me? 4-star kid, you should know the rules, right?" The leader looked at Zi Chen and said disdainfully, "Who do you think you are? How dare you talk to me with this attitude?" Chapter 3580. The surroundings instantly became quiet, and it lasted for a few breaths of time. The leader, who had a look of disdain earlier, was completely stunned. The other leaders beside him were also stunned. They were 17 leaders wearing Celestial King armors, and their combat power was naturally the strongest. However, Zi Chen, a 4-star, actually dared to treat a 6-star leader with such an attitude. "You're courting death." Ming Tai's face immediately turned cold. He had been so domineering since the beginning because he had the support of many forces, so he had nothing to fear. However, who would have thought that a mere 4-star would dare to speak to him with such an attitude? Zi Chen sized Ming Tai up and said disdainfully, "How can an idiot like you be a leader? Kid, do you know who you're talking to?" Before Ming Tai could finish, he was interrupted by Zi Chen. "You don't have to tell me where you're from, because I don't care about the forces you're talking about. You just have to remember that I'm from the Holy Thunder Clan, and you're provoking the dignity of the Holy Thunder Clan. That's enough. What an arrogant kid. Today, I, Ming Tai, want to see what you're capable of." Ming Tai's aura surged, and the Celestial King armor was activated by him. The other leaders didn't say anything, but watched silently. Wasn't this the result they wanted? In this cultivation world, combat power always determined everything. Why could the 4 great sacred clans and the 5 great families occupy a world by themselves? Because of their powerful combat power. Zi Chen waved his hand again and said, "I haven't finished speaking, so please wait a moment. Even if I'm in a hurry to be reincarnated, I don't mind saying a few words. If you have something to say it quickly. Today, I, Ming Tai, will kill you." The other party said coldly, and his eyes were filled with murderous intent. "I want to tell you 2 things, which are also for everyone present. Your death is only slightly related to offending me. The ultimate cause of your death is that you didn't abide by the rules that we agreed on in advance. People who don't even know the rules don't deserve to live in this world. Secondly, you dare to disregard the dignity of the Holy Thunder Clan. This is not putting the Holy Thunder Clan in your eyes. You dare to provoke the Holy Thunder Clan. You can only atone for your sins with death." Zi Chen said, "In other words, there are 2 reasons why you must die. Alright, I'm done. You can come over and accept your death." Many of the holy spirits from the surrounding forces had stopped in their tracks. When they heard Zi Chen mention the cause of death, they exchanged awkward glances with each other. It should be known that although Zi Chen's battle prowess was powerful, he was still only a 4-star, after all. Even if he had an invincible defensive Celestial King armor, Ming Tai also had one. Let me ask you, under the circumstances that both of you have the Immortal King armor, how could you look down on your opponent? All the leaders had strange expressions on their faces. They felt that Zi Chen's words were a little too arrogant. Lei Wushuang smiled. A member of the Holy Thunder Clan should be so courageous. Even if I can't kill you, I'll defeat you with words first. As the saying goes, one does not suffer losses. She began to admire Zi Chen more and more. Die. Ming Tai charged towards Zi Chen, surging with murderous intent. A terrifying aura swept over. Lei Wuxing immediately retreated. He actually did not interfere in this matter. In everyone's eyes, this seemed to be a battle between gentlemen. In reality, Lei Wuxing felt that there was no need for him to interfere. Zi Chen was forming a seal. Of course, it was the lightning controlling technique. He had used this move too many times and had long become incomparably adept at it. Seal completed. Lightning fell. Heaven and earth roared. A blinding white light appeared. It was as if a lightning dragon had broken through the wall from the outer world and landed on Ming Tai's body. Ming Tai's body began to glow. Countless lightning bolts bloomed from within. At this moment, in the sky above the divine city, when that lord saw this scene, he let out a cry of surprise. "Lord, is there a problem?" The subordinate standing behind him asked. One should know that even when the peak of the mountains was discovered, the lord did not make a sound. He only watched calmly. "That move of his seems to have the aura of an otherworldly immortal," said the lord of the Immortal Clan. The aura of an otherworldly immortal? The subordinate behind him was stunned, somewhat confused. The lord of the Immortal Clan looked up at the sky and muttered in a low voice, "Perhaps this move of his is from an otherworldly immortal. Since there are traces of that place, We will definitely succeed this time. The bright lightning disappeared. Zichen stood on the peak of the mountain, his expression still cold. Under the disappearance of the lightning, there was a charred corpse and a complete set of immortal king armor. Ming Tai was dead. Everyone was in an uproar. Especially the leaders, each and every one of them widened their eyes in shock as they stared at Zichen. They also had immortal king armor, so their combat strength was not weak. However, it was not easy to kill Ming Tai. But to Zichen, it only took one move. He killed the enemy with one move. Lei Wusheng shook his head slightly, feeling pity for Ming Tai. Why did he have to court death? At the same time, he was also shocked by the power of the lightning controlling technique. He knew a little about this technique. It was said that only 2 people in the Holy Thunder Clan could master it. One was a senior of the Holy Thunder Clan who had died many years ago. His realm and background were unknown. He seemed to be extremely mysterious. There were no records of him in the Holy Thunder Clan. The second was Zichen. Lei Wusheng ran to Zichen's side and looked at him curiously as if he wanted to see through him. Swoosh! Zichen's figure disappeared. The next moment, he appeared beside the dead Ming Tai. How precious was a set of immortal king armor! Stop! However, just as he was about to take the immortal king armor, a shout suddenly came from behind. A holy spirit came forward. Swoosh! Swoosh! Lei Wusheng and Lei Wusheng, who had been indifferent all this time, flew forward at the same time and struck out several palms. All the holy spirits were repelled. Zichen returned to the mountain peak again and said calmly, "Everyone, there are only 16 left now. I wonder which one of you wants to go back on your words and break the rules." Lei Wusheng, who had frightened the other holy spirits and returned to the mountain peak, couldn't help but exclaim in admiration. Zichen's words were very clever. He asked the experts to go back on their words and break the rules instead of continuing to provoke the dignity of the Holy Thunder Clan. Obviously, this was to save some face for everyone and to pave the way for everyone. At the same time, that sentence also meant that Zichen could still use the previous attack. For a moment, the 16 leaders fell silent. Zichen had already proven his strength. Even if they were wearing the immortal king armor, their lives would still be in danger. Even if they guessed that Zichen wouldn't use such a move more than a few times, who among the 16 of them wanted to be the first to be cannon fodder and make a wedding dress for someone else? However, they weren't willing to retreat just like that. The lord from the immortal clan looked at the scene in front of him and said calmly, "This efficiency is too slow. Give them some information." "Yes." The person behind him nodded and disappeared. A moment later, a strong spiritual aura erupted from the immortal city. This aura swept out from the city like a wave. Sensing this strong spiritual fluctuation, the spirits of all the holy spirits shook. Their spiritual realms, which had been stagnant for a long time, seemed to have improved a little at this time. Chapter 3581. After coming back to their senses, the leaders finally understood the ultimate purpose of coming here. No matter how many opportunities the Holy Thunder Clan obtained, as long as they found the solar massing crystal lode, their harvest would be 10 times or even 100 times that of the Holy Thunder Clan. The leaders wearing the immortal king armor looked at each other and were still hesitant. Lei Wusheng said with a smile, "It seems that the solar massing crystal lode is about to appear. Why don't I suggest that the first person to find the lode share it with everyone?" The smile on his face inevitably carried a hint of sarcasm. If they had to share the things that they had painstakingly obtained with others, which force would be willing to risk their lives to find it? Wouldn't it be better to just stay there and wait for a ready-made opportunity? It was the same at the moment. Why should the Holy Thunder Clan share the opportunities that they had obtained with others? The leaders looked at each other. In a situation where no one was willing to be cannon fodder, they naturally did not dare to start a war with Zichen. In that case, they might as well do the Holy Thunder Clan a favor. The mighty one from the Holy Sun Clan then said, "If that's the case, let's discuss how we should attack this immortal city. Since there are so many opportunities outside, who can guarantee that there is nothing inside?" The other leaders nodded in agreement. This immortal city was very large, and it would not be easy to attack it. It would require the cooperation of many forces. At this time, it would be unavoidable for them to lose more than gain if they were to have a conflict with the Holy Thunder Clan. Everything else is easy to discuss, but the Holy Thunder Clan must return the immortal king armor. At this moment, a voice came from behind. It was an existence wearing the immortal king armor. It was the clansman of Ming Tai who had died previously. Since the forces were no longer thinking about the opportunities of the Holy Thunder Clan, Zichen did not care about the immortal king armor, although he had a great impulse to keep it. Once Lei Wuxing obtained this armor, his combat strength would naturally increase, and the combat strength of the Holy Thunder Clan would also increase. Unexpectedly, just as Zichen was about to agree, a voice suddenly rang out. "Lord Zichen, our Qin family is willing to buy as many of these armors as we can. We hope that you can make it easy for us." In an instant, several people transmitted their voices to him. This caused Zichen, who was about to return the Celestial King armor, to be slightly stunned. Following this, Zichen came to a realization. Ming Tai, who had died, should have been the result of many factions working together to conquer this world. Although he did not know why Ming Tai had obtained the Celestial King armor, it was clear that the other factions were not convinced. "What's wrong?" Lei Wuxing looked at Zichen, who had a strange expression on his face. Zichen said, "Something interesting happened." The person wearing the immortal armor seemed to have guessed the reason. He immediately said, "My lord, that immortal king armor originally belonged to the Mu Ming family. I hope that my lord can return it." Clearly, at this moment, his attitude towards Zichen had become extremely polite. Nonsense. Previously, the immortal king armor was Ming Tai's. Now that Ming Tai has been killed by my lord, it naturally belongs to my lord. At this moment, an indifferent voice rang out. Another person wearing the immortal armor walked out. "That's right. If this was on the battlefield, would you be able to take back the armor?" Another person stood out. The others looked at each other. Clearly, they did not expect that someone would actually stand out and have designs on the immortal king armor. However, when they thought of the indestructible defense of the immortal king armor, everyone understood. So troublesome. Zichen frowned slightly. The person from the Qin family immediately clasped his fists and said, "Actually, it's not troublesome at all. Because the immortal king armor was originally my lord's spoils of war, it's naturally up to my lord to decide." When Zichen heard this, he smiled slightly and said, "In that case, it's up to you to arrange it." With that, Zichen threw the immortal king armor to the Qin family sacred spirit that he had never met before. The other party was stunned at first, but then there was a hint of ecstasy in his eyes. He immediately clasped his fists and said, "Thank you, my lord." Zichen was not stupid. He knew that the factions would definitely not let the Holy Thunder Clan have two pieces of the immortal king armor. Therefore, this thing would have to be handed over sooner or later. Since there was a dispute between the two sides, Zichen was naturally willing to hand it over to someone who was beneficial to him. The sacred spirit from the Muring family glared at Zichen. However, at this time, the immortal king armor was no longer in Zichen's hands. He had no choice but to ask for it from the Qin family. Lei Wuxing and the others went to discuss the matter of entering the world, while Zichen stayed on the mountain peak. Lei Wuxing did not follow but stayed by Zichen's side. "I say, did you really use the lightning controlling technique just now?" She was very curious. Zichen nodded. "You can kill the enemy in one move?" Lei Wuxing asked again. Zichen thought for a moment and nodded. Basically. There was only one exception. The exception that Zichen mentioned was the last time when he fought the demonic spirit dragon. At that time, the demonic spirit dragon took a blow from the lightning controlling technique but did not die. Zichen deliberately restrained his power, but the demonic spirit dragon's extraordinariness was also the main reason. "Why don't you teach me?" Lei Wuxing's eyes lit up. She finally said what she was passionate about. Zichen looked at Lei Wuxing and did not say anything. "What? You don't want to? If I learn that move, my combat strength will naturally be stronger. At that time, the strength of our Holy Thunder Clan will naturally increase." Hearing Lei Wuxing's righteous words, Zichen's expression became even more strange. He said with a smile, "I didn't expect you to know this move too." Lei Wuxiang's cheeks were slightly red. She glared at Zichen and said, "Forget it if you don't want to teach me. There are no good men." Zichen said with a smile, "What do you mean by that?" "But the lightning controlling technique is extraordinary. It can't be taught." Zichen did not lie about this. He actually did not know how he learned the lightning controlling technique. Of course, he could not teach it. A moment later, Lei Wuxing returned. "How was it?" Zichen looked at him and asked. "Wait for reinforcements to arrive, then attack the city," Lei Wuxing said. "What should we do after discovering the soul-gathering crystal mine?" Lei Wuxiang asked. "It'll naturally belong to whoever discovers it," Lei Wuxing said indifferently. "When it involves other people's interests, no one will relent. I've already sent a message to the bloodline ancestor. Reinforcements will arrive in time." He looked at the immortal city in front of him with a deep gaze. "I'm afraid it won't be so easy to enter the depths this time." Zichen nodded in agreement. There were traces of people living in the original 18 worlds. But this time, only a small number of immortals appeared. The others were clearly in that city. Once they entered the city, there would be a great battle. The next step was to wait. With the arrival of more and more reinforcements, the invasion of the city was imminent. At this time, Zichen opened the summit of mountains for the second time. Because he estimated the time, Lei Lan and the others would come out soon. Chapter 3582. The leaders wearing the immortal king armor stood on top of the mountain in the distance, watching everything. The reason why they stood further away was to avoid suspicion and also to guard against Zichen. The original Ming Tai had been killed, and his immortal king armor had yet to find a new owner. Many forces jumped out, wanting to keep the armor alone, and there was a heated debate about it. This was because the existence in the immortal city had said that the greatest opportunity could only be found with the 18 immortal king armors. "I wonder what's inside," the leader of the Holy Sun clan said as he looked at the shining passage. "An unknown world naturally has an unlimited future." The leader of the Holy Star clan said regretfully, "Why don't we have such a talent in our clan?" The leader of the Holy Sun clan patted the leader's shoulder and said, "We were originally allies. Perhaps we could get a share of the loot." The leader of the Holy Star clan's face gradually turned ugly. That idiot Xingyichen had not only been killed by Zichen, but he had also offended the Holy Thunder clan, causing Lei Wuxing to be quite critical of this matter. After coming here, he thoroughly investigated this matter and learned the whole story. At this moment, he said coldly, "Xingyichen's actions were indeed inappropriate, but through this matter, we also know the tolerance of the current Lei Zheng clan's successor." The leader of the Holy Sun clan nodded slightly. This time, Lei Zheng Hongtian had left a bad impression in the eyes of the leaders. After returning this time, some of the transactions with the Lei Zheng family might change. Unlike the others, as the strongest representatives of the various clans, they valued quality more than benefits. Only with good quality would there be long-term benefits. At this moment, someone walked out of the passage. "He's out. I wonder what he will gain." The group of leaders then waited patiently. Although the people who entered this time were all sacred spirits of the Sacred Thunder tribe, it wouldn't be difficult for them to obtain information on the inside. Zichen looked at Lei Lan, who walked out first, and heaved a sigh of relief. Lei Di was not here, so of course, he could not let anything happen to Lei Lan. After all, she was the only disciple of the holy sage. "How was it?" Zichen looked at Lei Lan and asked with a smile. "It was a daunting experience without any mishap. I've gained a lot," Lei Lan said excitedly. "Moreover, I also obtained a part of the immortal armor." Zichen's eyes glinted. Lei Lan had said a portion instead of one or two. From this, it could be seen that the harvest this time was not small. "My lord, we've struck gold this time. There are a lot of good resources inside," Levi said excitedly. "This time, we even left people inside to guard." Zichen smiled and said, "It doesn't matter. If there are no accidents, only I can open this place. Therefore, only we can obtain the things inside." Zichen's words were not suppressed at all and spread out. The group of leaders quickly received the news that the Holy Thunder Clan had gained a lot from their exploration in that unknown world. But at the same time, he also learned that only Zichen could open that place. Therefore, they could only look on enviously and smile bitterly. Excluding the undiscovered soul-gathering crystal mine, the one with the greatest harvest this time was, of course, the Holy Thunder Clan. More than 99% of the Holy Thunder Clan members who came here had gained benefits. Only the last few had gained very little or nothing. They were Hu Huanshan and Lei Zhang Hongtian. Even among the people recruited by Lei Wuxing this time, there was no one from the Hu family or the Lei Zhang family. Obviously, he was deliberately avoiding suspicion. This was his right, and no one could say anything about it. In another place, Moji looked at the peak of the mountain and the excited disciples of the Holy Thunder Clan, and a smile appeared on his face. How can you still smile? That place is coveted by everyone, right? You're giving it away just like that. The sixth young master said unhappily, "What are you thinking?" Moji said, "If everything goes smoothly this time, the last great opportunity will definitely be ours. And if we lose the greatest opportunity, Zichen's fate can be imagined. Therefore, if we gain more now, he may still have a chance of survival. We can't be too ruthless. After all, we've been looking for talents for so many years, and we don't want to kill them." Among the many reinforcements that came this time, the number of holy spirits of the Holy Thunder Clan was exceptionally large. This was because they still had to guard the peak of the mountain. At the same time, the attack on the immortal city was imminent. Therefore, before entering, Lei Wuxing went to find Zichen. At this time, Zichen and Lei Wuxuang were sitting on the peak of the mountain, talking and laughing about something. He raised his eyebrows slightly and walked forward. With a light cough, Zichen turned around and nodded at Lei Wuxing. Lei Wuxing came to the side and glanced at Lei Wuxuang. Lei Wuxuang stood up, glared at Lei Wuxing, and then turned to leave. "What's the matter?" Zichen looked at him with some surprise. "This time, entering the immortal city is full of danger. I have a suggestion. Do you want to hear it?" Lei Wuxing said. "What suggestion?" Zichen stood up because he found that Lei Wuxing's expression was unprecedentedly solemn. "This time, you have done enough for the Holy Thunder Clan. Going deeper is just icing on the cake. Moreover, only you can open this place. After thinking about it, I decided to let you stay and guard this place. I will take the Immortal King armor and enter the depths to look for opportunities." Lei Wuxing asked, "Do you think it's feasible?" Zichen fell silent. It was not that he was reluctant to part with the Immortal King armor, but he did not want to give up the opportunity to make the greatest contribution to the Holy Thunder Clan. Zichen said, "The soul-gathering crystal mine is extraordinary. Even if our harvest this time is not small, compared to the soul-gathering crystal mine, it is just a drop in the ocean. In name, there are only 18 Immortal King armors, but there are no less than 100 forces. Under such circumstances, the probability of obtaining an opportunity is not more than 1%. Lei Wuxing said, "Under such circumstances, having an invincible sacred spirit does not mean much." This was the truth. If they really found the soul-gathering crystal mine, he believed that everyone was prepared to die, including those leaders. Under such circumstances, how many could Zichen kill? In fact, Lei Wuxing might even die in there. Obviously, under such circumstances, Lei Wuxing was really thinking for Zichen. Although in this place, the death of a sacred spirit only meant the loss of a physical body, to condense such a physical body again would require a great price. Zichen thought for a moment and said, "No matter what, I can't let anything happen to Lei Lan. Holy Venerable Lei Di left the Holy Thunder Clan because of me, so I must protect her well." Lei Wuxing said, "I have considered this problem. Lei Lan will also stay." Zichen looked back at Lei Wuxing. This friend he had not known for a long time was really looking out for him. However, Zichen shook his head and said, "Even if I am willing, Lei Lan will not agree. This is a rare opportunity. I believe she is also willing to sacrifice her life for the Holy Thunder Clan." Chapter 3583. A simple bracelet appeared in Lei Wuxing's hand. On the surface of the bracelet, there were countless runes. What's this? Looking at the obviously extraordinary bracelet, Chen asked in confusion. The tribe gave it to me before I came here. It's a pseudo-venerable seal. Once activated, it's equivalent to an attack from a saint venerable. Even if there's the suppression of the laws of heaven and earth in this area, it's still equivalent to an attack from a 9-star saint spirit. It should be able to kill all enemies in a moment of crisis, Lei Wuxing said. Chen's expression changed when he heard this. If Lei Wuxing had such a thing, then the leaders of the other forces would naturally have similar things. Chen looked at Lei Wuxing with a questioning look in his eyes. Lei Wuxing nodded and said, yes, everyone has it. In this way, Chen's invincible saint spirit title would naturally be reduced. Those people didn't use it last time because they had scruples in their hearts. At the same time, because this thing was too precious, they felt that it would be a waste to use it on Chen. Chen's hand flashed and a spirit ring appeared. This was what he got after killing Di Mingtai last time. No need to look. There's definitely nothing. Lei Wuxing, who guessed Chen's intention, said, this thing is very valuable. There will be a secret method to take it away by force. Chen checked it. There were many resources inside, but there was no venerable seal. He couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. Seeing Chen's insistence, Lei Wuxing didn't stop him and even gave him such a life-saving treasure. Chen didn't take it and shook his head. You're the leader. This is yours. How can I take it away? I got a lot of immortal armors this time. I'll just refine one. As for the immortal king armor, I'll give it to you. Take it. I think it's more useful on you. Lei Wuxing forced the bracelet into Chen's hand and warned, you only have one chance. Use it as a last resort. With that, Lei Wuxing turned around and left. Chen stared at Lei Wuxing's back. His expression became complicated. It wasn't that there weren't people who treated him so well, but there weren't many. There was only one person like Lei Wuxing whom he had known for only a few months. You don't have to thank me. I feel that this thing will be more useful if it's with you. Furthermore, I know that you truly care about the Holy Thunder Clan. Compared to the others, it's a lot better. Lei Wuxing's voice came from the front. He left without looking back. Chen understood Lei Wuxing's intentions, but the gratitude in his heart still remained. There were unknown dangers in the immortal city. No one could predict life and death. Who doesn't know how to save their own lives? At this moment, another person walked over from afar. He came to Chen's side and called out, Sir. Chen turned around and realized that it was the saint spirit from the Qin clan. Back then, he had given the celestial king armor to him. Thank you for what happened last time, sir. Qin clan's saint spirit, Qin Yanhua, said, it's just that our Qin clan didn't manage to get the celestial king armor this time. It was taken away by the Muring clan. However, we also fought for some resources. We took out a portion of them to exchange for this thing for sir. An ancient aura appeared in front of Qin Yanhua. It was a talisman seal. Even in its sealed state, countless ripples still surged on its surface. What is this? Sensing the strong fluctuation, Chen asked curiously. We accidentally obtained the holy talisman technique. It's suspected to be from the ancient era. It's about the level of a 5-star saint. It's called Thunder Sweep. Qin Ruhua said, although sir isn't a 5-star holy talisman master yet, I believe that it won't be long before you break through. Other than that, we also prepared some holy talisman papers. The holy talisman papers that Qin Ruhua took out were also of the 5th grade. It was obvious that he had prepared everything before coming. This was the other party's good intentions. It was also his intention in the past. Chen didn't feel ashamed to accept it. He thanked him and accepted it. Sir, this time, the Celestial King armor was obtained by the Mumming clan because their celestial venerable ancestor is most likely guarding outside. Chen nodded. Clearly, this was a warning. However, he wasn't worried because the bloodline ancestor was here. Once he left this place, the bloodline ancestor would follow him. They had specially sent him something useful in the future. Clearly, This was the Qin clan's intention to befriend him. Hence, after Zi Chen chatted with Qin Yanhua for a while, the other party bid farewell and left. They were about to enter the city. The group of forces had a final discussion and the itinerary was finally decided. All the saint spirits set off for the immortal city. Lei Wuxuang was forced to stay because she had to guard this place. Although she was unwilling, she knew the importance of this matter. Although everyone would leave this time, no one could guarantee that the other forces wouldn't send people to snatch it. After all, the opportunity this time was too great. Zi Chen stood in the group and was particularly eye-catching because of his celestial king armor. Beside him stood a group of saint spirits from the Holy Thunder clan wearing celestial armor. Among them were Lei Bai and Lei Ba. Lei Lan was on his left. She had special senses and was also the main force of this exploration of the immortal city. Lei Wuxing stood at the front. However, compared to the other 17 people, he was only wearing a celestial armor that was one grade lower. He was somewhat out of place. However, he didn't care and even rejected Zi Chen's suggestion to give him the celestial king armor. Under the attention of countless saint spirits from the Holy Thunder clan, he raised his palm and slashed down like a blade. Attack! At the same time, the other 17 commanders also gave the order to attack. Battle cries rang out everywhere as countless saint spirits charged forward. Zi Chen looked forward, his gaze becoming extremely deep. He warned, "Everyone, be careful." Then, with their respective captains as the unit, the saint spirits formed a group and advanced. Lei Ba also joined Zi Chen's group and advanced side by side with Lei Bai. In another direction, Hu Huanshan officially formed an alliance with Lei Wuxing. Because he had been excluded by Lei Wuxing, he could only stay with Lei Wuxing. This time, he didn't gain anything. His family was already very dissatisfied, so he had to gain something this time. In the sky above the immortal city, the ruler looked at this scene indifferently. Countless saint spirits were like flying ants, densely packed together. He said indifferently, "Go, let them see our strength." Yes. The people behind him disappeared into thin air. The immortal city was very large, and there were countless buildings. After the saint spirits entered, they went straight for those buildings. Clearly, there might be opportunities inside. Boom! A building suddenly exploded, and a person soared into the sky. It was an immortal wearing celestial armor. He held an immortal saber in his hand and slashed at a 6-star saint spirit. The 6-star saint spirit blocked with his weapon and shouted at the same time, "Surround and kill him." With a loud boom, the 6-star saint spirit was sent flying, and a crack appeared on the saint spirit weapon in his hand. In terms of quality, the immortal weapons here were indeed extraordinary. Seeing this, the surrounding saint spirits all rushed forward. During this time, someone took out a saint talisman and crushed it. The shattered saint talisman appeared in midair and rushed toward the immortal like a fire dragon. This was a soul attack that sank directly into the immortal's sea of consciousness. Just as the immortal was dazed for a moment, several attacks came flying at him. All of them were soul attacks. The 6-star saint spirit that had been sent flying flew forward, and the weapon in his hand with a crack swept across the immortal's neck. Puff. Chapter 3584. After killing an immortal in the blink of an eye, the other holy spirits immediately turned around and formed a small circle around the immortal's corpse to protect it. At the same time, they were on guard against the other holy spirits. The value of immortal armor was too high, so it was inevitable that some people would try to steal it. After all, it was extremely difficult to kill an immortal, but it was easy to determine life and death in a battle between holy spirits. This was the prototype of an immortal hunting squad. In the following days, many teams like this appeared, all for the sake of killing immortals and obtaining immortal armor. And in this city, the biggest reward was the immortal armor on the immortals. Every immortal had one, which was extremely extravagant. Zi Chen and Lei Ba's people formed a team of more than 100 people. During this time, they split into smaller teams to kill immortals. Among them, Zi Chen's ghost spirit holy talisman was the main force of the battle. In this battle, he only needed to constantly activate the ghost spirit holy talisman. The situation on his side was relatively easy, but the situation on other sides was not optimistic. Immortals with immortal armor were too strong, so holy spirits were dying all the time on the battlefield. Holy blood splattered, dyeing the ground of the immortal city red. The immortal ruler looked down from the sky, watching his subordinates die one by one. His expression was cold and indifferent. The battle continued, and it was extremely tragic. The holy spirits of many factions suffered even more casualties. 3 ghost spirit holy talismans turned into 3 little ghost spirits, flying forward and entering an immortal's sea of consciousness. When the immortal's sea of consciousness was attacked, his speed was significantly reduced, and his combat strength was greatly reduced. Lei quickly stepped forward and slashed his immortal sword at the immortal's neck. In other parts of the battlefield, it seemed that no one was having a smoother time than Zichen's side. Suddenly, Zichen looked up at the sky above the immortal city, frowning slightly. Leilan, who was standing beside him, noticed Zichen's abnormality and asked, "What's wrong?" Zichen said, "Something's not right." At this time, light flowed in his eyes, but it was the eye of destruction. He looked up at the sky. In the previously invisible sky, there were now traces of energy, emitting multicolored light, flying into the sky and entering it. That power was the life force that was flowing away, as well as the dissipation of soul power. But why would his life force and soul power enter the sky? For some reason, Zichen felt a strong sense of unease as he looked at the blue sky. "What's wrong?" Leilan asked again. Zichen shook his head and said, "It's nothing. Maybe it was just my imagination." What sharp senses! Up in the sky, the immortal sovereign caught sight of Zichen. Their eyes met, but Zichen did not see him. However, the fact that the other party was able to notice the abnormality in this place was sufficient to show that his eye technique was extraordinary. "The first stage shouldn't be too difficult for you all," the immortal hegemon muttered, "but the second stage will be much more difficult." While killing the immortals and obtaining the immortal armor, many of them also found some good quality immortal stones in the buildings. The battle quickly turned into a battle of plunder, and immortals died one after another. Speaking of which, Zichen and the others were invaders. But the immortals clearly did not think so. They called them ants, and their expressions were arrogant. Even though death was imminent, none of them chose to beg for mercy. Zichen looked ahead. There were many buildings here, and there were many immortals as well. But he still felt that something was wrong. It was a matter of numbers. There were 18 planets in the periphery, and there were some cities on those planets. There should have been many people living in those cities. If those people had all retreated to this main planet, that meant that there were countless immortals here. But what about those people? Although there were many immortals here, it was far from what they had expected. The battle continued, and the number of immortals dwindled. Everyone had obtained a lot of immortal armor, and in order to maximize their strength, they all wore it. When the last immortal was killed, everyone was preparing to search this place to see if there were any special areas. Suddenly, a voice rang out from the immortal city. "To be able to make it here, it seems that there are some slightly stronger ones among you ants. But if you want to obtain the greatest opportunity here, you are far from enough. Next, there will be a second great gift waiting for you." As the voice rang out, many of the Holy Spirit's hearts tightened. Although they had gained a lot here, the danger was not small. And judging from the other party's tone, it was obviously not a good thing. A straight ray of light appeared in the sky, and landed in the center of the city. Then, the light began to expand. There was no powerful aura, only a real light that kept expanding. Many of the Holy Spirits were stunned, not understanding what it meant. The light was expanding rapidly, and it was obviously going to fill the entire immortal city. No one knew what it meant. The light swept past some of the Holy Spirits, and their faces immediately turned pale, as if they were under immense pressure. Buzz! At that moment, the immortal armor glowed, and an invisible field appeared, isolating the strong pressure. Everyone heaved a sigh of relief. The pressure from before was too terrifying. Who would have thought that at that moment, a scream would suddenly ring out beside them? It was their companions. Under the light, their bodies began to disintegrate, turning into light spots, like countless fireflies dancing in the sky. The powerful holy spirits could not control their bodies at all. Hearing the screams around them, Zichen's expression changed. Looking at the other holy spirits who were unharmed, he shouted, "Those who do not have immortal armor, retreat quickly and leave this city." His reaction was fast, and his voice was so loud that it rang clearly in everyone's ears. Those who did not obtain the immortal armor this time, after hearing this, immediately flew back. The light was following them. In an instant, the holy spirits began to use all kinds of mysterious techniques, and their speed reached the maximum in an instant. At that moment, death was close behind them, and no one dared to continue hiding. Although there were still people who were engulfed by the light and disappeared in the sky, after Zichen's warning, many of the holy spirits managed to escape from the immortal city and save their lives. The light extended to the top of the city wall, like a big bowl that was upside down, protecting the entire immortal city. The holy spirits were frightened, and they slowly retreated, obviously not daring to rush forward. Chapter 3585. The original surroundings were filled with corpses. There were immortals and sacred spirits of the various factions. However, after the light that descended from the sky enveloped the city, the corpses all turned into light spots and disappeared from the immortal city. In an instant, the place became extremely empty. Even the buildings could no longer be seen. It was as if they had encountered a world-destroying immortal light that destroyed everything in the world. The reason why they were able to survive was not because they were strong, but because of the immortal armor on their bodies. The immortal armor was protecting them at this moment. Even so, there was still a strong pressure on their bodies, causing many sacred spirits to feel a little uncomfortable. At this moment, everyone's eyes were fixed in front of them. They saw that there were winding stairways that went straight into the clouds. Perhaps it was a coincidence, but there were a total of 18 stairways. Other than that, there was nothing else. The leaders of the various factions looked at each other. Obviously, the 18 stairways meant 18 immortal king armors. No one knew which one had the greatest opportunity. This put everyone in a difficult position. Almost subconsciously, everyone looked towards Zichen because this time, the Holy Thunder Clan had obtained the most opportunities. Then, following them this time, would it mean that they would be able to obtain the greatest harvest? Unfortunately, other than these stairways, there were no other hints. On the Thunder Clan's side, although Zichen was wearing the immortal king armor, Lei Wusheng was the real leader. He turned his head to look at the other immortal king armor leaders and said, "Everyone, please?" The group of leaders looked at each other, not immediately making a choice. Because at this moment, they saw Zichen use that eye technique. Perhaps there would be other discoveries. At this moment, the leader of the Holy Fire Clan said, "Brother Wusheng, why don't you go first?" The other leaders nodded and decided to let the Holy Thunder Clan make the choice first. Lei Wusheng looked at Zichen. Although he did not believe that Zichen could see the difference between these stairways. The light in Zichen's eyes disappeared and he said, "In that case, we won't be polite." Zichen pointed to the second stairway on the right and said, "Let's go." After that, Zichen led the team straight to that place. As soon as the Holy Spirit of the Holy Thunder Clan moved, it was like a torrent of thunder and lightning. However, right at that moment, a blazing wave of fire swept over. A huge sea of fire appeared in the sky. Inside that sea of fire were all holy spirits. It was none other than the Sacred Flame Clan. The leader of the Sacred Flame race stood above the sea of fire and smiled at Lei Wusheng. "Many thanks." Then, he turned his head and smiled mockingly at Zichen. Zichen remained indifferent. Those from the Sacred Flame tribe were the first to rush into the stairway. At this moment, the other leaders all had regretful expressions on their faces. Evidently, a place of opportunity had been seized just like that. However, they soon discovered that Zichen's expression did not change much, causing them to mutter in their hearts. What a bunch of idiots. With Zichen's cunning, how could he not have guessed this? Whether the first place has an opportunity or not is another matter, but it's definitely accompanied by great terror. Hu Huanshan smiled coldly. Lei Jing Hongtian looked at the scene silently. After a while, he said, "Do you think the second place is real or fake?" Now, Zichen had chosen another place and was leading the team there. However, As soon as Lei Jinghongtian asked that question, he regretted it. If this idiot knew Zi Chen's thoughts, he would not have been cheated so miserably. If the first place is fake, then the second place must be fake too. Hu Huanshan did not notice the change in Lei Jinghongtian's mood and said confidently, however, they will still choose to go in. I believe Zi Chen can also guess this. Looking at the somewhat unfathomable Hu Huanshan, Lei Jinghongtian asked, why? Because if you make a choice, there's still a chance. If you give up, there may not even be a chance. When he said this sentence, Hu Huanshan's mood was a little depressed because he had a deep understanding of it. He knew some of Zi Chen's tricks, so when he dropped the flag, even if he guessed that Zi Chen might cheat him, he still chose to drop the flag. But who would have thought that Zi Chen would cheat him from the beginning to the end? In such a big world with countless resources, Hu Huanshan was the first person to get nothing from the beginning to the end. There was no doubt that the biggest joke this time was him. Sure enough, another force went ahead and surpassed Zi Chen to enter the second stairway. Zi Chen was still expressionless and continued to walk to the third stairway. Then, it was robbed again. Next, Zi Chen waved his hand and said, "You all stay here." After that, Zi Chen went to the fourth stairway alone. This scene made the other forces stunned. They did not know what Zi Chen was doing. But as Hu Huanshan said, even if all of this was fake, there was still a glimmer of hope. Since there was hope, they had to fight for it. Thus, another force went forward and surpassed Zi Chen. Following that, the scene of the snatching continued to appear one after another. One after another, the immortal King Armor leaders made a choice with the help of Zi Chen. In the end, there were only 4 stairways left and 4 forces. They were the Sun, Moon, Star, and Thunder sacred tribes. Zi Chen looked back at them and said, "Do you still want me to help you?" The leader of the sacred Star tribe shook his head slightly and said with a smile, "That's not necessary. Just pick one." Zi Chen walked over. The 4 forces were here. In addition, there were also some idle forces standing in the distance, looking in this direction. Looking at Zi Chen walking over, the leader of the sacred Star tribe said, "So, you didn't find anything this time?" Zi Chen's eyes flashed with a strange look, then he nodded and said, "The 18 stairways look exactly the same." The other party continued, "So, you helped them make a choice. If I didn't do that, they would probably be stuck here for a long time." Zi Chen pointed to the last 4 stairways and said, "Which one do you choose next?" The leader of the sacred Star tribe said, "The nearest one." At this time, Lei Wusheng said, "Strictly speaking, we are the invaders this time, but the other party opened the door and let us in. I have a feeling that things are not that simple." The other 3 leaders nodded. According to the powerful strength shown by the immortals, they could definitely fight against the other forces, but they did not resist stubbornly. Although the Holy Thunder clan still suffered a lot of losses, the immortals seemed to have the intention of opening the door. There may be unknown dangers on the stairways. If we can meet, I hope that everyone can work together. Lei Wusheng said again. The 3 leaders nodded for the second time. Chapter 3586. After the 4 factions had made their choices, the other idle factions followed one after another. During this time, Lei Jinghongye and Hu Huanshan's men were among them. "Where are we going?" Hu Huanshan asked. Lei Jinghongye pointed at one of the stairways and said, "There." Hearing this, Hu Huanshan's eyes widened. "Where are we going?" "They won't allow us to join." Lei Jinghongye said in a deep voice, "This is our only chance to turn the tables." After saying this, he walked forward, followed by the holy spirits of the Lei Zheng family. This time, the Holy Thunder clan had obtained a great harvest, but the Lei Zheng family's harvest was extremely small. This was because Lei Wusheng had deliberately neglected the Lei Zheng family in his arrangements. Because of this, the family was very dissatisfied. This was because the Holy Thunder clan had sent a full 10th of their experts to this place. This showed how important this place was to them. The Lei Zheng family would not allow themselves to be in this place without any harvest. Therefore, Lei Jinghongtian, who had lost the qualification to become a core member, was under unimaginable pressure. He wanted to turn the tables and even fight for the opportunity to become a core member. This was his only chance. Hu Huanshan led the Hu family members and followed. If he could turn back time, he would have befriended Zichen the moment he met him, instead of deliberately targeting him. Originally, he thought that he could completely ignore Zichen since he was on the Lei Jing family's ship. Who would have thought that this time, he actually brought the Hu family to bet on the wrong person? From the latest news, Lei Jing Hongtian's status as the future successor of the Lei Jing family was now in jeopardy. Once the other party lost all his power, his previous promises would naturally be invalid. Therefore, he had no choice but to follow Lei Jing Hongtian. He was like a gambler who had used up all his wealth and put his life on the line, hoping to make a comeback. They chose the path that Zichen had taken. After Lei Jing Hongtian and the others left, Ink and the sixth young master also walked out. The two of them were also wearing immortal armor. Behind them were more than 10 powerful existences. Although there were not many of them, they were all experts who had mastered the spirit extermination technique. Do you really think that Zichen will be able to obtain the greatest opportunity? The sixth young master asked doubtfully. Mo Yi gazed at the stairway to heaven in front of him and said, "I'm not 100% sure." The sixth young master immediately opened his eyes wide and said in disbelief, "What? Not 100% sure? What is the purpose of our visit?" Ink retracted his gaze and looked at the sixth young master. If anyone can find the solar massing crystal lode this time, it will be Zichen. Therefore, if Zichen can't find the solar massing crystal vein, everyone will return empty-handed. "Let's go," Ink said. "Whether or not we can obtain the greatest opportunity here will depend on Zichen." The group of people followed Zichen. After entering the stairway to heaven, Zichen was a little surprised that there was no danger as he had imagined. He walked up the stairs and a wind blew from above. Zichen, who was wearing the immortal king armor, felt a chill in his heart. "Everyone, be careful. This wind seems a little strange." Zichen looked around and then reminded everyone. Next, Zichen began to climb the seemingly endless stairs, step by step. As he got higher and higher from the ground, the wind that appeared around him also became stronger and stronger. Even though he was wearing the immortal king armor, Zichen still felt the cold wind pass through the immortal king armor and enter his body. Buzz! Lightning surged around his body as Zichen activated the immortal king armor to a greater extent. Even he, who was wearing a high-quality immortal king armor, needed to mobilize a greater extent of power, let alone the others. Everyone, including Lei Wuxing, raised the power of their immortal king armor to the limit. Lei Wuxing, who was at the side, raised his head and looked at the stairs that reached into the clouds. He frowned slightly. If the current situation persisted, it would be difficult for everyone to reach the top. Refine the immortal stone and maintain the energy. At this moment, Zichen's voice suddenly sounding very decisive. At this moment, there was an immortal stone the size of a human head in his hand. It was of extremely high quality. When the others heard this, some of them followed Zichen and began to refine the immortal stone without hesitation. Some of them stared at Lei Wuxing with hesitation. "Refine it at full speed," Lei Wuxing immediately said. Clearly, he understood Zichen's meaning. During this time, Zichen did not stop. He was climbing at a constant speed. During this time, an endless stream of energy appeared from the immortal stone and entered his body to replenish his body's consumption. The hurricane whistled and cut his body like wind blades. Zichen, who was walking in front, turned around and looked at the slightly pale Lei Lan. He asked, "How is it?" Lei Lan's entire body was enveloped in the light of the immortal armor. Even so, the cold wind still made her feel extremely uncomfortable. The immortal stone, which was originally the size of a human head, had already been consumed by 1/3. She shook her head, indicating that it was not a big problem and that she could still hold on. "Stand behind me. The wind will be weaker." Zichen looked up at the sky. He still could not see the end, as if it was really a ladder to the sky. He said again, "If the consumption can't keep up with the recovery, immediately change to a higher quality immortal stone." Immortal stones were divided into sizes and quality. The small ones were not of high quality and were very mixed. The larger the size, the higher the purity. This meant that after killing the immortal beast, the energy in the immortal beast's body would quickly condense and not dissipate too much, so the size was very large. As for the small ones, on one hand, the energy of the immortal beast would disappear. On the other hand, during the process of fusing with the immortal stone, there would be too much contact with the impure energy in the world, causing the energy to be mixed. Of course, this situation was also effective for the immortal stone's mined from the mine. Under such circumstances, if the consumption could not keep up with the recovery, then before reaching the top, they might not be able to hold on. And once the energy was exhausted, no one knew what would happen next. After hearing Zichen's words, some of the Holy Spirit's faces showed reluctance. Immortal stones were much better than saint crystals, and higher quality immortal stones were even more so. They might even be able to help them break through bottlenecks. At this moment, it was more or less a waste to use them to recover. Now is not the time to be frugal. You can ask the Holy Thunder Clan for the immortal stones you consumed when you go back. Zichen said in a low voice, also, if you don't have any high-quality immortal stones, you can come to me to get them. The Holy Spirits who could come here were all powerhouses. Not to mention the price of the high-quality immortal stones, which one of these immortal armors was not worth a city. Everyone knew the importance of this, and they all took out high-quality immortal stones to refine them. At this time, higher in the sky, the immortal clan ruler said indifferently, "You will have to return what belongs to this place in the end." A gust of wind fell from above, like real wind blades, and slashed towards Zichen. Careful. Chapter 3587. Lightning surged out from his body and merged into the immortal king armor. The immortal king armor emitted a strong light. At the top of the stairs, countless real wind blades flew towards Zichen, who was in the lead. Clang, clang, clang. Like real weapons clashing, countless sparks sputtered. The wind blades collapsed, leaving white marks on the immortal king armor. Standing at the front, Zichen, who was only a 4-star, was under a lot of pressure. His energy consumption began to increase. His feet seemed to have grown roots, but it was also as if he was being suppressed by a divine mountain, making it difficult for him to move forward. No matter how strong his combat power was, for Zichen, a low cultivation level would always be his weakness. Except for him and Lei Lan, everyone here was a 6-star saint spirit. Buzz. The power of the saint bone was fully activated by Zichen. In an instant, his entire body was filled with powerful energy. The sudden explosion caused Lei Bai and Lei Ba, who were behind him, to feel a chill that was even more terrifying than a hurricane. The saint bone had appeared, and all the pressure disappeared. Lei Bai and Lei Ba stood behind him, protecting Lei Lan in the middle. Lei Lan was the key to finding the opportunity. After a full 10 breaths, the wind blades disappeared, and all the saint spirits breathed a sigh of relief. Looking at the armor that was full of white cuts on their bodies, their eyes were filled with joy. If it weren't for the immortal armor, none of them would have survived. It was no wonder that the light from before would expel all those who didn't have the armor. The immortal armor was the basic requirement for ascending. But then, they realized that in just 10 breaths, their energy consumption was huge. At this point, no one had the mentality of leaving things to chance. They hurriedly refined high-quality immortal stones to recover quickly. The same scene was playing out in every place. The ruler of the immortal city looked down and said indifferently, "Now, enjoy your feast." More wind blades fell from the sky like a rain of blades, carrying with them the sound of breaking air. "Be careful," Zichen reminded Lin Feng once again. At that moment, countless wind blades had already appeared in his eyes. Instead of defending himself, he punched out with his fist. The golden fist light shot forward and instantly expanded. It was as if a mountain had exploded in front of him. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The sharp whistling sound continued to resound. Only a few of the countless wind blades were shattered. The other wind blades that were undamaged passed through the berserk energy and continued to descend. Boom, boom, boom. The others made their moves one after another. For a moment, all kinds of energy began to explode, constantly destroying the wind blades. Countless wind blades pierced through the violent energy and landed in the crowd. The saint spirits began to resist and unleashed the full power of their immortal armor. Suddenly, a wind blade that was about to land on the Holy Spirit's body began to tremble slightly. As it trembled, the wind blade turned into a strange-looking existence. Its head was like an inverted vertebra with pointed ears. Its skin glowed with a green light and it looked extremely ugly. It held a weapon that looked like a long thorn in its hand. When the sacred spirits in front of him saw this, they were slightly startled. This strange creature's eyes revealed a cold expression. The similarly strange weapon in its hand directly pierced towards the other party's chest. The Holy Spirit's thoughts began to spin rapidly. It was trying to think of a way to kill Lin Fan. As for breaking through his defense, he had never even thought about it. Because it was impossible. Puff. With a soft sound, the indestructible immortal armor was pierced through like a piece of paper. The strange sharp weapon pierced through the Holy Spirit's chest and completely sank into it. The Holy Spirit's pupils suddenly widened. He looked in front of him in disbelief and looked at the strange figure. Whoosh! The other party's body disappeared into thin air. It turned into a wind blade again and flew into the distance. Life was draining away. The Holy Spirit's eyes gradually lost their luster. Streaks of white light appeared on its body and it began to disintegrate. This time, even the immortal armor was disintegrating. The same scene was playing out in several places. In an instant, the Holy Thunder Clan's main force lost nearly 20 experts. Cries of alarm rang out. The other Holy Spirits quickly dodged. For a moment, the entire team was in chaos. What's going on? Lei Wusheng looked behind him. His expression gradually turned cold. It's a strange creature hiding in the wind blades. Zichen's eyes flashed. His eye of destruction had discovered something. At this time, the wind blades had disappeared. Those strange creatures had also disappeared. There was no longer any abnormality. The next time the wind blades come, use your eye of destruction. Be careful. Lei Wusheng reminded them. Next, let's move forward at high speed. There was a great pressure on the stairway to heaven. It made it impossible for them to fly in the air, let alone leave the range of the stairway to heaven. Under such circumstances, they could only be slaughtered. Instead of that, it was better to climb the stairway in the shortest time possible. Next, everyone sped up. The wind blades above their heads also came as expected. Zichen's eyes flashed. Under the eye of destruction, he could clearly see many lights that were incompatible with the wind blades. Buzz! His sea of consciousness shook. The Holy Spirit's flying knife turned into lightning and flew out. After drawing an arc of lightning in front of him, it flew forward. Boom! The flying knife passed through the wind blades and hit one of them. The wind blade instantly exploded, and a scream was heard. The eye of destruction saw a ray of light disappear. There's hope. Zichen's eyes lit up. He controlled the Holy Spirit's flying knife again and used the Holy Thunder defensive knife art to destroy the strange creatures hidden in the wind blades. However, he was only one person, and the range of support was extremely limited. This time, nearly 10 Holy Spirits were still killed. Moreover, Zichen noticed that the moment the strange creatures attacked, a light flashed on the weapons in their hands. At the same time, the same light flashed on the target's immortal armor. Under such circumstances, the immortal armor was as fragile as a thin piece of paper. There was no defense to speak of. Damn it, there's something wrong with the immortal armor. Zichen couldn't help but curse. In the face of the current situation, he couldn't remind everyone to give up the immortal armor. Because once they lost the immortal armor, the countless wind blades would instantly tear their bodies apart. If they didn't wear it, they would immediately die. Wear it and wait for death. This made him feel like he had entered a trap. He looked up at the sky. Was this the purpose of the immortals opening the gate? Watching them die here one by one, and in the end, no one could leave alive. Suddenly, a voice sounded in Zichen's mind. Your perception is very sharp. As a reward, 2/3 of your people can stay. Chapter 3588. The hurricane whistled down. Looking at the countless strange creatures in it, Zichen felt a sense of helplessness. There was also a sense of helplessness. He opened his mouth, but in the end, he didn't say anything to remind everyone. Because this was a trap. Once they entered the immortal city, they would be in the trap set up by the immortal city's ruler. In this trap, they could only move forward. Previously, everyone only had one chance to retreat. That was for those holy spirits who didn't get the immortal armor and were fast enough to escape the city in time and save their lives. Otherwise, they could only keep moving forward. Either live or die. Among the countless strange creatures, none of them attacked Zichen, nor did they attack the people around Zichen. Leilan was still safe. But it was different in other places. Death was constantly happening. All the dead holy spirits would turn into light spots and disappear along with the immortal armor. This was a massacre based on personal preference. It was like a butcher looking at lambs in the slaughterhouse. Whoever he wanted to kill would be killed. A battle that was close to a massacre lasted for a while before it ended. The Holy Thunder Clan had lost 1/3 of their members. Just as the other party had said. And on the other 17 paths, all the forces had lost half of their members. They had lost so many people before climbing the stairway to heaven. This made the leaders' faces turn ugly. The hurricane disappeared, and the surroundings became extremely quiet. The survivors of the Holy Thunder Clan all heaved a sigh of relief. Zichen suddenly said, "Everyone, retreat." The crowd, who had just relaxed, was stunned and looked at Zichen in confusion. They came here to look for opportunities, but they hadn't found any yet. Moreover, they had just suffered heavy casualties and blocked a wave of attacks. Why did they have to retreat now? Retreat, all of you, retreat. Zichen said again, "Everyone, leave. I'll look for the opportunity alone. You're not allowed to move forward anymore." His words were extremely tough, and there was an irresistible meaning. Everyone looked at each other in dismay. "Ant, I have to admit that you're really smart. You know that only you can come up in the end. However, as your punishment, I have decided to deprive you of your only chance. That's why the other 17 people can succeed, but you have the greatest difficulty." The voice of the sovereign of the immortal city rang out again. "Furthermore, if you turn around now, do you think you can still escape?" Zichen turned around and saw that the stairs behind him had disappeared. The others also noticed this scene, and their expressions changed. Zichen's face gradually turned pale. Lei Wusheng asked, "Did you find something?" Zichen shook his head and said, "Keep moving forward. All of you have to remember that finding opportunities is secondary. The most important thing is to stay alive. Being alive is the most important thing." After that, Zichen didn't explain further and walked up. Just as he took a few steps forward, balls of blazing flames appeared above his head. It was as if countless flaming meteorites were falling from the sky, carrying with them a powerful aura. "This time, let's reduce the number of people by half." At the same time, Zichen heard the voice of the city lord again. Behind the meteorites was a huge fire beast. It looked like a dragon with wings, and it spewed flames at the group. The flames were like viscous magma. They fell from the sky, pouring down on the group. It was abnormally terrifying. "Die!" Lei Wusheng roared angrily. His hands quickly formed a seal, and a huge lightning seal appeared in the sky, smashing toward the huge fire beast. Boom! The lightning raged, forming a terrifying shockwave that spread out in all directions. The huge fire beast's body sank down. In the endless sea of flames, Zichen jumped up, left the stairs, and landed on the back of the fire beast. He held the battle spear in his hand and stabbed at the huge fire beast's head. Poof! There was a sharp whistle as the battle spear instantly pierced through the huge fire beast's head. A shrill scream sounded. Zichen pulled out the battle spear, allowing the blood to spray on his body. He used the force to jump up and return to the stairs. The huge fire beast's vitality had been extinguished. Its corpse turned into countless specks of light and disappeared. The magma flames on the stairs gradually disappeared. Zichen looked back and saw that he had lost another third of his team. There was a hint of regret in his eyes. Lei Wusheng came over and patted Zichen's shoulder. "They all have backup plans. They are not truly dead. We will meet again in the future." Zichen nodded and composed himself. At this moment, they were like fish on the chopping board, unable to control their own lives. We didn't reach our expectations. We have to continue. Hearing this voice, Zichen immediately raised his head and saw an even more terrifying flame. It was as if a torrent of seawater was pouring down from the sky. There was nowhere to hide. The group of holy spirits raised their defenses in despair, hoping that the immortal armor could block this wave of attacks. These holy spirits did not hear that voice, so they were still resisting. Zichen used the power of the immortal king armor to protect Lei Lan. He felt very helpless because he could only watch his companions die one by one. My lord, thank you for taking care of us along the way. You allowed us to gain so much. Although we have never said anything, we have always been grateful to you. This time, I will leave first. Take care, my lord. Lei Bai's voice suddenly sounded in Zichen's mind. I have never told you, my lord. I am from the Chaos Extermination clan, and Lei Ba is my big brother. When Zichen turned around, he saw Lei Bai's body disintegrating in the flames. He said with a smile on his face, My lord, I believe that this time, you will definitely be able to obtain the final opportunity. His body disappeared. This time, more than half of them were killed. After killing the fire beast, Lei Wuxing turned his head and looked back. There were originally many Holy Thunder clan experts, but now there were less than 100 of them. Among them, many people's auras were very weak. It was obvious that they had consumed a lot of energy. He smiled bitterly and looked up at the endless stairway. He thought to himself, is everyone going to die here? The road ahead still had to continue, so the death toll was still increasing. Zichen felt a deep sense of helplessness in his heart. He could only watch as one of his companions died on the spot. Wind blades, strange creatures, flames, and giant fire beasts. Next, they appeared one after another, and the number of people kept decreasing. This situation kept repeating on the 18 stairways until everyone was dead. And these people who died would all turn into light spots and fly into the sky. There was a vortex here, emitting infinite light. It was formed by countless white light spots. Below this vortex, there were 18 platforms, standing in 18 directions. Chapter 3589. Lei Bai, Lei Ba, dead. One by one, the people Zichen knew fell. On this path, there seemed to be no end at all. Only death was the end. After fighting one battle after another, Zichen could no longer see anyone when he turned back to look at them. Lei Lan stood beside him, her face as pale as paper. If it weren't for Zichen's protection along the way, she wouldn't have been able to reach here. Other than that, the only other person left from the Holy Thunder clan was the leader Lei Wuxing. Covered in blood, he smiled bitterly at this moment. He looked at Zichen and asked, Do you think we can still find an opportunity this time? Zichen said in a deep voice, Perhaps there is no opportunity here in the first place. Lei Wuxing was slightly taken aback. Perhaps this is a trap in itself. We are in the trap, and everyone will die tragically here. Zichen smiled bitterly. After we die, the immortals here will kill their way out of the city and kill our people. How can this be? Lei Wuxing's expression changed drastically. This is just my guess. Because other than that, I really can't think of any other reason, Zichen said. Perhaps, there are other reasons that we don't know. After a short conversation, the endless flight of stairs in front of the three of them suddenly changed. The staircase disappeared, and a real path appeared in front of them. In front of the path, there was a huge open space. We've reached the top. The three looked at each other and saw the surprise in each other's eyes. Zichen, who was wearing the Immortal King armor, was the first to walk forward. Even though he had already seen the top, his expression still didn't relax. Lei Lan followed behind, and Lei Wuxing was in charge of the rear. In front of them was a huge open space, and behind it, there was a light gate. We've finally reached the top. Seeing the light gate in front of them, Zichen breathed a sigh of relief. There was a look of relief in his eyes. It's not the top, it's your people who are all dead. At that instant, a calm voice could be heard. A man appeared out of thin air in front of him. He was dressed in a long white robe and had a handsome appearance. He seemed to have the demeanor of an immortal. Once everyone dies, the heavenly path will naturally come to an end. The other party pointed behind him and said, "The thing you want is behind this door. But if you want to go there, you have to kill me. Or rather, you will be killed by me and lose your qualifications." The other party wasn't spouting nonsense. The reason for that was because only a single person had managed to survive on the other 17 stairways to heaven. That person was the immortal King Ama. The first of the 17 immortal kings stood in the same position as Zi Chen, but they did not meet this white-robed man. In front of them was a door of light. After a slight hesitation, they walked into the door of light. After that, they found themselves standing on a circular platform with countless runes carved under their feet. In front of them stood a man. It was the city lord of the immortal city. He looked at the crowd and said, "Welcome." Zi Chen and Lei Wuxing looked at each other. The two of them removed their immortal armor at the same time. Lei Lan retreated. She couldn't help in such a battle. The white-robed man looked at all of this and smiled faintly. "Your senses are very sharp. And your team is very interesting. So interesting that it's beyond your imagination." Zi Chen waved his hand. 81. Ghost Spirit Saint talismans flew out and spun in the sky. They were only on guard and did not attack. The white-robed man glanced at Zi Chen and said indifferently, "Your technique is a little strange, but it's not enough to deal with me." As soon as he finished speaking, he pointed forward. A strong aura surged out from his fingertip. Zi Chen and Lei Wuxing immediately felt the space around them become extremely viscous. It was as if they were in a swamp, and their bodies were greatly affected. Buzz! Buzz! The two of them activated the power of the sacred thunder. As the thunder surged, the pressure was slightly reduced. Immortal shows the way. Looking at the two people who seemed to be facing a great enemy, a cold smile appeared at the corner of the white-clothed person's mouth. A ray of white light flew forward and split into two. It was like a fork in the road, heading straight for the two people. The immortal shows the way was referring to the two of them. At this time, the white-robed man's white robes fluttered in the wind. He looked like a real immortal. Facing this attack head-on, Zi Chen looked serious. He took a step forward. The whole space trembled, and countless thunderbolts lit up the surroundings. Boom! Thunderbolts surged around him. He punched forward. It was the holy thunder explosion. The power of the sacred bone was activated at this moment, shining brightly. At the same time, a talisman of the sacred arm disappeared from Zi Chen's right arm. Without the immortal King armor, Zi Chen was only a 4-star cultivator. He attacked with his full strength. When the fist light struck the white light, it exploded with a loud bang. Boundless lightning energy wreaked havoc forward. Amidst the raging energy, Zi Chen's figure flew backward. Pa! 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 The 81 ghost spirit holy talismans floating in the sky shattered instantly. Then, the ghost spirit formation was activated. 81 small ghosts let out ghostly cries and surrounded the white-robed man. With a bang, Zi Chen's body smashed into the ground. Lei Wuxing retreated in the sky and landed beside Zi Chen. He asked, "How are you?" Zi Chen got up and shook his head. "I'm fine." The white-robed man looked at Zi Chen and said disdainfully, "Without the immortal King armor, you don't even have the right to make me attack." At this time, the ghost spirit holy talismans were slowly descending. The white-robed man did not seem to see it. The ghost spirit formation caused a huge commotion. It was impossible for the white-robed man not to see it. However, he was so indifferent because he was confident in his own strength. This made Zi Chen breathe a sigh of relief. If one did not truly understand the ghost spirit formation, they would never know how strange and scary it was. "Looking at you, it seems like you are not satisfied. Ants, today, I will show you the true power of the immortal tribe." The white-robed man's aura changed obviously. It became sharper and more terrifying. He pointed a finger at the sky. Punishment light. In the sky, the space seemed to distort and a huge vortex appeared. 2 beams of light fell from the sky, heading straight for Zi Chen and Lei Wuxing. The immortal light was extremely fast and had a locking aura. In this place of pressure, Zi Chen and Lei Wuxing were not confident that they could dodge this move. Therefore, the two chose to defend at the same time. Lei Lan stood at the back, looking very nervous. Boom. Boom. The immortal light fell from the sky and hit the two. In an instant, a terrifying aura spread. The entire space trembled and countless rays of light filled the surroundings. Lei Lan's eyes lost focus for a moment. The two beams of immortal light pierced through the sky and did not dissipate for a long time. The space distorted rapidly, as if it would shatter at any time. The white-robed man's expression was cold. A smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. He said confidently and calmly, "One dead, one injured. Too boring." Then, he glanced at Lei Lan. There was no need for him to live. Then, he pointed a finger at Lei Lan. Unexpectedly, the two beams of immortal light began to distort. Just as the white-robed man felt something was wrong and turned his head, he saw the two beams of immortal light shatter. Two powerful auras of thunder came out from the shattered immortal light. The other was black. Lightning surged, and flames burned. The other was silver, like countless tiny lightning snakes, with a violent aura. Zichen used the black flame technique. As the core, Lei Wusheng obviously had his own methods. At this moment, his eyes had turned silver. An unprecedented sense of power appeared from Lei Wusheng's hands. He said coldly, "Immortal tribe, is it? Now, let me see where your arrogance comes from." Chapter 3590. Seeing the successful activation of the Ghost Spirit Array, Zichen gritted his teeth and said, "Use your full strength. We can't let this guy underestimate our Holy Thunder clan." In front of Zichen, two heavenly divine arms flew out and entered Lei Wusheng's arms. Silver light bloomed all over as Lei Wusheng rushed up. "Die!" He smashed down with his fist, shaking the void. A giant hammer appeared on his fist, flashing with lightning as it fell down. The white-robed man's expression was still disdainful as he stretched out his palm. The lightning hammer was firmly caught by the white-robed man's palm. He said indifferently, "Here, I am invincible." Immortal light lit up in his palm. Boom. The lightning hammer exploded, and Lei Wusheng's body was knocked back. As he retreated, a lightning seal appeared in the sky. There were dragons and snakes dancing on the lightning seal, and it fell down with a mighty aura. "It's useless. You have no other choice but to die." The white-robed man looked at Lei Wusheng and said coldly. A beam of immortal light shot up and hit the lightning seal. Boom. The lightning seal exploded, turning into energy that scattered in all directions. Black flame peak. At this moment, a cold voice came from beside him. It was Zichen activating the black flame technique and displaying a powerful attack. The black flames burned, and everywhere they passed, space was distorted. "Your attack is not bad, but your cultivation is too low." The white-robed man stretched out his palm and placed it on Black Flame Peak. A terrifying power gushed out from his palm. Black Flame Peak collapsed in an instant, and the powerful impact forced Zichen to retreat. After retreating dozens of feet, Zichen said in a deep voice, "There's something strange about him." Lei Wusheng said, "It's similar to a domain. He does have the title of Little Invincible here." Then, Lei Wusheng asked with a smile, "How about it? Do you dare to continue?" Zichen said boldly, "Why wouldn't I dare? It's just the junior invincible realm. Once upon a time, I even killed a real invincible realm expert." As soon as he finished speaking, Zichen rushed forward. This time, he did not use any martial arts techniques. He only relied on his powerful physical body to attack. A punch, a palm strike, a kick, but every strike was done with full strength. Lei Wusheng, who was by his side, also displayed the abilities of a core member. The so-called minor invincibility meant that one had a great advantage in a domain that belonged to them. It was like a domain, but it was different from the real invincible realm. The real invincible realm represented the master of the world. For example, Zichen was truly invincible in his own Tianwu world. However, this kind of true invincibility was only relatively speaking. If a Saint Venerable or an 8-star or 9-star Saint Spirit were to face him, even a true invincible Saint Spirit would lose. Therefore, the two of them had to use their own strength and endurance to defeat this little invincible. The man in white floated like an immortal, easily neutralizing the attacks of the two. His expression was full of disdain. "Look at the two of you. You're the strongest among the ants. I didn't expect you to be so weak." The man in white said disdainfully, "But ants will always be ants. There's still a world of difference between you and us immortals." Zichen did not respond. He just kept punching, and the power of the black flames was constantly stimulated. At the moment, he obviously could not care about anything else. He had to defeat his opponent first. Lei Wusheng was the same. His seemingly casual attack was comparable to Zichen's attack after using the black flames. Lei Lan stood behind him, very nervous because this battle was a matter of life and death. At the same time, she was also very helpless. She blamed herself in her heart because she was too weak. She and Zichen were both 4-star saints, but Zichen was the main force on the battlefield, and she could only be protected all the way. Zichen did not say a word. He kept attacking, although from beginning to end, he did not cause any effective damage to the other party. Lei Wusheng was the same. Every time his attack fell, there would be an invisible force neutralizing it. It was not how powerful the other party was, but the interference of the domain. That was how the little invincible came to be. However, Zichen did not seem to notice this and kept attacking. The smile on the man in white's face gradually faded. There was a limit to this game. Once there was no more fun, it would naturally come to an end. Is there any point? The man in white's palm glowed. Powerful immortal energy surged from his palm like a huge wave that could topple mountains and overturn seas, sending the two flying. Zichen landed on the ground. The black flames on his body were still burning. Obviously, he still had plans to attack. If this continues, it will only make you ants look too weak. You can't hurt me at all. The other party's expression was arrogant, and his words were cold. Zichen glanced at Lei Wusheng. The two did not communicate at all and rushed forward again. One left and one right, one black and one silver. Completely different thunderbolts surged violently. Seeing this scene, the man in white's face turned cold. His eyes flashed with cold killing intent. "Since you insist on courting death, I'll fulfill your wish." At this moment, Zichen punched. Black flame explosion. This was his most powerful punch. At this moment, after using the ultimate power, the man in white raised his eyebrows slightly. He seemed a little surprised. But he still did not care too much. He waved his hand and threw out his palm. With a boom, the terrifying aftermath surged around the two, and their robes fluttered. The man in white's left and right palms blocked the attacks of Zichen and Lei Wusheng. As the energy surged, Zichen snorted. "Die." A ray of holy thunder flew out of his sea of consciousness and went directly to the man in white in front of him. For the Holy Spirit flying dagger, this distance was very close. There was no way to avoid it. "Do you think this will work?" The man in white's expression was still disdainful. The Holy Spirit flying dagger actually stopped in front of his eyebrows. The Holy Spirit flying dagger was spinning rapidly, but it could not go any further. A hint of sarcasm appeared at the corner of the man in white's mouth. This hint of sarcasm froze in an instant. A ray of black light appeared beside him. With the force of a thunderbolt, it broke through the barrier of the domain and pierced into the man's sea of consciousness. It was the half of Lei Wusheng's soul weapon. As the domain was broken, the Holy Spirit flying dagger, which had been spinning, moved forward and pierced through the man in white's forehead. The Holy Spirit flying dagger went in between the eyebrows and flew out from the back of his head. It turned into a ray of light and disappeared beside Zichen. Looking at the man in white's frozen expression, Zichen said coldly, "If it weren't for the domain here, I could kill you countless times by myself." At this moment, the aura of Zichen's soul became weak in an instant, as if there was a mysterious force that was devouring his soul. The man in white stood there, his expression frozen. His eyes were fixed on Zichen. Death was near. A smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. This smile was full of mockery and sarcasm. Lei Wusheng, who was beside him, used a powerful secret technique and consumed a lot of energy. At this moment, seeing the man in white smile, he did not know why, but he had a bad feeling in his heart. Chapter 3591. The moment he sensed this aura, Lei Wuxing turned his head and saw a person. It was Lei Jing Hongtian. He quickly came forward with a cold murderous look on his face. He said indifferently, "Zi Chen, it's your turn to die this time." A holy talisman appeared in his hand. The holy talisman was surrounded by 7 light patterns, releasing a powerful aura. It was a 7-star holy talisman. He did not hesitate to crush the holy talisman. As the holy talisman shattered, a thick thunder light appeared. It was like a real thunder dragon, baring its fangs and brandishing its claws, releasing a terrifying power that suppressed the soul. 7-star holy talisman, dragon soul destruction. This holy talisman alone was priceless. He had been waiting for this moment for a long time. He had waited for everyone around him to die one by one. If he did not have a life-saving method and a temporary breakthrough to 6-star, he would not have made it here. However, the people who followed him were all dead. Fortunately, all the waiting was worth it. He finally found a chance to kill Zi Chen. For this, he did not hesitate to use a life-saving holy talisman. When Zi Chen sensed the abnormality and turned around, the thunder dragon was already in front of him. The terrifying soul aura was like a storm, blowing in this place. This made Zi Chen's heart sink. If it was an energy attack, he could resist it with his strong physical body. However, this was a soul attack. According to the current state of his soul, it was impossible to block it. At this time, he could only watch the thunder dragon coming towards him. What followed was naturally death. Unexpectedly, at this time, there was another person in front of Zi Chen. It was Lei Wuxing. He opened his hands and blocked the attack for Zi Chen. The thunder dragon entered his sea of consciousness. Zi Chen, who was ready to die, was completely stunned. In front of him, the ferocious expression on Lei Jing Hongtian's face froze. He was dumbfounded. According to his original intention, this time, he only wanted to kill Zi Chen and then join forces with Lei Wuxing to obtain the final opportunity. This way, not only could they obtain the final reward, but they could also befriend the other party. This was extremely beneficial to the Lei Zheng family's future. But who would have thought that Lei Wuxing would actually block the attack for Zi Chen? Why? Zi Chen is only a 4-star. Are you the leader? Lei Lan was unable to react to what had just happened, and by the time she did, everything had already ended. Leader Lei Wuxing had blocked that fatal blow for Zi Chen. After taking the blow to his soul, Lei Wuxing slowly turned around, looked at Zi Chen, and said, "The rest is up to you." After saying that, his body fell backward, and his vitality dissipated. Death. He was dead. As he watched Lei Wuxing fall to the ground, Zi Chen's expression slowly turned cold. A cold killing intent appeared in his eyes. Humph. Since that's the case, I'll be the one to obtain the greatest opportunity. Lei Jing Hongtian snorted coldly. He was already a 6-star holy spirit. As someone who was only one step away from becoming an ultimate core, he believed that his current strength was not weaker than Lei Wuxing's. Therefore, it would not be a problem to kill the weak Zi Chen. At this moment, the last bit of the soul of the white-robed man behind Zi Chen disappeared. Then, a large mass of pure soul flew from behind and disappeared into Zi Chen's sea of consciousness. It was the feedback from the ghost spirit holy talisman after killing the enemy. Zi Chen's originally weak soul was rapidly recovering. Lei Jing Hongtian, who was full of confidence, was a little dumbfounded after perceiving this scene. Lei Jing Hongtian, you must die. Zi Chen's body was surging with monstrous killing intent, but he did not lose his mind. Golden light lit up from his body, and he put on the immortal king armor. Along the way, the enemies he had encountered were not external enemies, but internal enemies. First, in the outside world, Lei Jing Hongtian deliberately made things difficult for him, and even used the incarnation of the holy sage. If the real body of the bloodline ancestor had not appeared, he would have been the one to distort the truth. After coming here, Hu Huanshan had been obstructing him, causing him to encounter too many enemies for no reason. It was not easy to get here, and he had joined forces with Lei Wuxing to kill the little invincible realm. Who would have thought that he would encounter a sneak attack from his own people? How could Zi Chen not be angry? Go to hell. Zi Chen was enraged. The aura around his body surged violently, like an enraged beast. He stabbed forward with his spear, using his strongest attack. Spear 1, Heaven and Earth. This was the martial skill of the immortal spear, which was very powerful. Feeling the monstrous killing intent surging around Zichen, Leijing Hongtian's original confidence disappeared in an instant. He would not forget that the immortal king armor had the effect of breaking the immortal armor. Therefore, in the face of Zichen's peak spear, he turned around and ran. A core disciple of the Holy Thunder Clan, who was only one step away from the peak of the core, was scared away by an existence 2 realms lower. No one would believe him if he said it out loud. Die. The spear missed, and the spear light tore through the space. Zichen roared and chased after him. Leijing Hongtian quickly jumped down the stone steps and fled back the way he came. Zichen chased after him, vowing to kill him. Unexpectedly, at this moment, a voice sounded from his sea of consciousness. It was the ruler of the immortal city. If you step out of here, you will be disqualified. He stopped in an instant, his eyes full of struggle and unwillingness. At this time, Leijing Hongtian had already disappeared. The powerful aura surging around him converged in an instant. Zichen turned around and looked at the place where Lei Wuxing disappeared. There was only half of his soul weapon left, and even his spirit ring had dissipated. He silently walked forward and put away the soul weapon. He wanted to take this half of the soul weapon back. Lei Lan came to Zichen's side, looked at the silent other party, and said guiltily, "I'm sorry. No need to apologize, it's not your fault." Zichen's eyes were cold. "This time, I won't let him go." As soon as his voice fell, Zichen's body flashed, and the immortal king armor disappeared. He walked forward. Lei Lan still followed behind. However, in front of the light door, there was suddenly an obstacle. There was a mysterious force that stopped Zichen from moving forward. The voice of the immortal city ruler sounded again. "Without the help of the immortal king armor, you can't go in at all." Zichen took the immortal king armor earlier because he was worried that there would be something fishy inside. Without the immortal king armor, he couldn't go in. It seemed that it was true. "Wait for me outside." Zichen looked back at Lei Lan. Lei Lan shook her head and said firmly, "There's no point in me staying here. At most, I'll die. Anyway, I'll be able to see you when I go back." Seeing Lei Lan's insistence, Zichen didn't say anything else and pulled her forward. The immortal king armor shone, and Zichen passed through the light door. Outside the light door was a spacious platform. Chapter 3592. Welcome. Everyone's finally here. When the city ruler saw Zichen, he couldn't help but smile. Zichen looked around. There was only the platform, nothing else. Where was the opportunity? Out of caution, he didn't use the Eye of Destruction. Lei Lan stood beside Zichen and slowly shook her head. There was nothing here. She couldn't sense anything. "You want to know where the opportunity is, right?" The city ruler pointed above the platform and said, "The opportunity is up there. It's a great opportunity beyond your imagination. But before that, I need to let someone rest." The city ruler flicked his finger, and a beam of light appeared on the platform beneath Zichen and Lei Lan's feet. The light enveloped Lei Lan's body. In the next moment, Lei Lan's body slumped to the ground as if she had fallen asleep. In the blink of an eye, a 4-star sacred spirit in immortal armor had lost consciousness. The other leaders were stunned. "What are you doing?" Zichen turned back and stared at the city lord, pointing his battle spear at him. Actually, his original intention was to put away the celestial king armor. However, after standing on the platform, the celestial king armor seemed to have fused with the platform and no longer listened to his commands. His expression seemed cold, but he didn't have the slightest bit of confidence. Because the immortal king armor was no longer under his control. Don't be angry, because what I'm about to say is only known to the 19 of us. The city ruler waved his hand and said, "Didn't I say before that there's an opportunity here? A great opportunity. If you think it's just a soul-gathering crystal mine, then you're gravely mistaken." Regardless of whether the leaders believed him or not, they were all looking at the celestial city lord with interest in their eyes. Actually, they were all generals without an army. There was no one else to send. The term leader was no longer appropriate. The city ruler pointed above and said, "Before I talk about the opportunity, allow me to apologize to everyone. I chose this method because I need to conspire with the 18 most senior people. Therefore, you're worthy of being called experts for being able to come here despite all the dangers." Everyone's expressions darkened. This was because the people he had brought, regardless of their strength, were all dead. Not a single one of them was left alive. Taking in the changes in everyone's expressions, the other party continued, "All right, let's talk about this great opportunity. I believe that after you hear it, you will definitely think that all the previous sacrifices were worth it. Because this place leads directly to the immortal realm." Zichen's heart skipped a beat. He had always known that there was another world beyond the 3 realms. Xuewu had once come from that place. However, it was only a guess and had never been proven. The expressions of the other leaders changed as well. Their eyes flickered. "Looks like you've guessed it as well." The immortal city leader smiled and said, "That's right, I'm from the immortal race outside of the god, devil, and spirit realms. I'm an even more powerful and noble life form. Right now, all we need to do is open the passage above us and allow the light of the immortal realm to descend. Then, after being baptized by the light of the immortal realm, you will be rid of your status as a lowly spirit clan and become the noblest immortal clan. Then, you will be able to return to the immortal realm and enjoy life there." The leaders looked at each other in dismay. The immortal city leader continued, "Once you reach the immortal realm, all of your strength will be converted into pure immortal power. Then, even the high and mighty holy sovereigns of the 3 realms will be ants beneath your feet. When that time comes, you can get whatever you want. For example, if you use your immortal power to traverse the river of time and capture a strand of their soul aura, they will be reborn. Immortals have limitless immortal power, and they themselves are the rulers of the 3 realms." The immortal city leader said excitedly, "Rulers of the 3 realms? Think about it, how noble is that?" The expressions of the leaders didn't change much, because they knew very well that although there were countless opportunities in the world, the path of cultivation still had to rely on one's feet on the ground and advance step by step. There was no such thing as reaching the heavens in a single step. There was no such thing in the past, and there would be no such thing in the future. In other words, no one believed the immortal city leader. Instead, they all thought that this guy was crazy, but they didn't express it with words. When the excited man saw the calm expressions of the leaders, he said, "I know that you don't believe me, but once you feel the immortal light, you will naturally understand everything." Zichen looked at him. Clearly, the next question was the most important one. "Everyone, release your soul aura and directly reach the sky. I believe that you are the strongest. After joining forces, you will definitely be able to open the passage to the immortal realm." The immortal city leader said, "Don't worry, even if you are unwilling to go to the immortal realm in the end, I will respect your choice. Before that, I will give you some benefits that will allow you to advance to the holy sovereign realm in a short period of time." The expressions of the leaders, who had been calm before, all changed. The allure of the words holy sovereign was too great. Previously, the leaders had been indifferent to the other party's extravagant words, but the words holy sovereign were enough to tempt them. The immortal city leader was slightly startled. Clearly, he didn't expect that what he had said before couldn't compare to the effect of the words holy sovereign. He smiled and said, "Since you are all prepared, I will tell you some details. In a while, I will activate the power of the soul-gathering crystal mine. How much you can absorb will depend on your luck. What I want to say is, completely relax your soul and follow the guidance of the power. You will reap great benefits. Perhaps the soul power that is temporarily absorbed will become your power permanently, allowing you to possess the soul of a holy sovereign in advance." Without giving the leaders too much time to think, the immortal city leader suddenly waved his sleeve. Lighter rays appeared under the feet of the 18 leaders. Waves of soul aura emerged from the lighter rays. These soul auras were surging, pure, and vast like the sea. The 18 leaders bore the brunt of the soul aura. They didn't need to deliberately absorb it at all. Their cultivation levels began to increase on their own. At this moment, a mystique appeared in their minds. This was the mystique that came with the immortal king armor. It was called plunder. The increase in cultivation level was real. The surrounding soul power was also real. At this moment, the leaders didn't hesitate at all and directly chose to use the plunder mystique. In an instant, the immortal king armor released an intense light. The surrounding soul power began to spin, turning into a huge vortex that was absorbed by the immortal king armor. Then, it became the leaders' power. Their cultivation levels, which were already increasing, began to soar crazily. 7th realm, 8th realm, 9th realm. At this moment, those who used the plunder mystique all had excited expressions on their faces. Because their souls were still increasing. In the next moment, someone reached the holy sovereign realm. It was as if a violent soul storm had swept across the field. Chapter 3593. In an instant, a 6-star Holy Spirit gained the soul of a Holy Venerate. How incredible was this? When the other Holy Spirits sensed the true might of a Holy Venerate, their expressions changed. This was real. So, this is a Holy Venerate. The leader who became a Holy Venerate said indifferently. At this moment, he was unprecedentedly strong. This is just a Holy Venerate. If you want to become stronger, open the passageway to the immortal world above you. At that time, immortal energy will enter your body. Then, you will know what true strength is, the immortal city ruler said with a somewhat bewitching tone. At that time, the Holy Venerate that you all once revered will be nothing more than an ant before you all. Buzz. Strong soul energy surged as the second leader became a Holy Venerate. Even though they were on different platforms, Zichen still felt an intense threat from this. Xiao Chen had truly felt a Holy Venerate's aura before. Hence, he knew that this feeling was real. However, Xiao Chen still resisted the urge to absorb the soul energy here. He did not trust this immortal city ruler. The other party definitely did not have good intentions for bringing them here. One aura after another appeared. Among the 18 leaders, quite a few chose to use the plunder god art. However, there were also some who restrained themselves. For example, 3 of the 4 holy races and 3 of the 5 element holy races chose not to use their divine abilities. Everyone, to be honest, if you all cannot work together, it will be impossible to open the passageway to the immortal world and obtain immortal energy. Furthermore, our many years of preparation will be for naught. At that time, the soul energy that you all obtained now, which is comparable to a Holy Venerate's, will probably be reduced to less than 10%. After hearing what the immortal city ruler said, the Holy Venerates stared at Zichen and the others. Previously, they would still be polite to each other because of their status. However, after becoming Holy Venerates, they revealed their true nature. Xing Wuhan, what are you doing? Why are you not refining that soul energy? Zichen, do you want to die? Cold voices rang out one after another. The people who had already become Holy Venerates no longer had any misgivings. Zichen looked forward and used the Eye of Destruction, which he had been on guard all this time. As far as the eye could see, everything was real. There were no illusions at all. In other words, these people's souls had truly reached the level of a Holy Venerate. Although his energy was not enough to compare with a powerful Holy Sovereign, as long as his soul realm was stable, it was only a matter of time before his energy reached that level. Furthermore, there were no bottlenecks during this period. Facing the pressure all around him, Xing Wuhan from the star race smiled bitterly. It seemed that he had no other choice. He used the plunder divine ability. The immortal king armor began to crazily absorb the surrounding spiritual energy. His cultivation level began to increase. It was indeed very fast. Zichen turned around and glanced at the unconscious Lei Lan. Her aura was still the same, there was no change. There was no path behind them, so they could only continue forward. The light in Zichen's eyes disappeared as he activated the plunder divine ability. In his sea of consciousness, the dark ghost devouring soul technique began to circulate rapidly, refining the soul force coming from all directions. However, the amount of soul power was simply too large. The refining speed of the soul devouring technique was simply too slow. Countless amounts of soul power immediately rushed into Zichen's sea of consciousness, filling it up. Then, Zichen's soul began to evolve. 5 stars. 6 stars. 7 stars. This was the feeling of breaking through. Everything was really happening. Zichen's soul became stronger, and the range of his sea of consciousness was constantly expanding. However, feeling his own strength, Zichen vaguely felt that something was wrong. However, no matter how he thought about it, he couldn't figure it out. At this moment, he was already an 8-star divine spirit. In his heart, there was a cruel and bloodthirsty feeling, an impulse to destroy everything. He didn't know where this emotion came from. In short, it was very negative and filled with resentment. 9-star divine spirit. Everything was happening naturally. There were no bottlenecks to speak of. Along the way, Zichen had encountered countless opportunities. There were also times when his cultivation level had advanced by leaps and bounds. However, it had never been like today. An unreal feeling lingered in his heart. Holy Venerate Realm. This was already another level. After breaking through the soul realm, Zichen could clearly feel the difference between a Holy Venerate and a divine spirit. It was really the difference between heaven and earth. It was like a ruler looking down on the common people and looking down at the ants under his feet. A belief of controlling everything in the world appeared in his heart. At this moment, Zichen was confident that he could destroy all of his enemies. At this moment, a strong desire suddenly appeared in his heart. That was the desire for power. It was as if there was a power even stronger than a holy venerate in the sky, waving at him, calling for his arrival. Immortal power? Zichen muttered softly. He still had some rationality left in him, and there was a light in his eyes. The Eye of Destruction. It could destroy all the rules in the world and see through all the illusions in the world. Under the effect of the Eye of Destruction, Zichen saw another kind of power. It was a kind of immortal power that was even stronger than the power of a holy venerate. It was very pure and very powerful. Since it really exists, there is no need to give it up. Zichen said in a deep voice, all the opportunities in the world, as long as I see them, there is no reason to give them up. Even if I can't get them in the end, I will try my best to fight for them. Zichen was using words to warn himself. At the same time, he was proving that he was very clear-headed and was not affected by the many negative emotions in his mind. In the next moment, he shot up into the sky and went straight for the pure immortal power. When he was in the air, he suddenly realized that there were other people coming toward the immortal power. Zichen was instantly alerted. It was the other 17 people. Everyone, you have crossed the line. Zichen's cold voice sounded. Then, he immediately sped up and rushed toward the immortal power. The other 17 forces also sped up. They were not much slower than Zichen. Get lost. Zichen shouted angrily. He raised his hand and shot out rays of light. This was the attack of a holy venerate. Every attack had the power to destroy the world. However, his attacks were easily neutralized by the others. Zichen suddenly realized that he had become a holy venerate. The others were also holy venerates now. Under such circumstances, it was naturally impossible for him to fight against 17 of them alone. Therefore, he sped up again. He instantly activated the 9 flash of holy thunder. It was as if he was really teleporting. He flew forward amidst the constant disillusionment. However, there seemed to be a strange force around the immortal power. Zichen kept revolving around the immortal power. It was as if he was real light. Looking at the 18 immortal kings in front of him, the immortal city ruler laughed loudly. Chapter 3594. The immortal city lord stood at the center, looking at the 18 immortal king armor leaders on the 18 platforms. There was excitement on his face, and his smile was very carefree. At this time, the immortal king armor was shining brightly, constantly absorbing the soul power from the platforms. This power entered the bodies of the 18 people through the immortal king armor, and then extended into the sky with the souls of the 18 people as a medium. At this time, above the heads of the 18 people, 18 beams of soul light rushed out. They were constantly entangled in the sky, spinning in circles. Gradually, a vortex appeared. The immortal city lord looked up at this scene with excitement in his eyes. As long as the vortex was formed, as long as the passage was opened, it would be the time for him to open the passage to the immortal realm. Zichen, who was revolving around the immortal power, finally found an opportunity to enter the immortal power. In his eyes, the eye of destruction appeared, and the flowing energy in front of him paused for a moment. Then, Zichen held the immortal spear in his hand and stabbed forward. Spear 1, Heaven and Earth. A cold voice suddenly rang out, exploding like a sudden clap of thunder. The space in front of him was directly pierced by Zichen's spear, tearing a huge hole in it. He flashed into it. The immortal power was close at hand. He held the long spear in his hand, still on guard. Fortunately, the others didn't follow. Clearly, they didn't have his unique eye technique. Zichen smiled coldly, put away the battle spear, and sized up the immortal power at a close distance. The immortal power was very powerful, but also very gentle. There was no sense of danger. It was like a powerful companion that he trusted the most, standing there quietly, waiting to be summoned at any time. In order to avoid any trouble, Zichen immediately reached out and reached into the immortal power. When he came into contact with the immortal power, Zichen truly felt that it was different. It was a grade higher than the power of the three realms. Zichen's immortal king armor released a strong light, and he shouted, "Seize!" Buzz! The immortal king armor began to tremble, and then a terrifying devouring power came from it. The immortal power was instantly absorbed and then converted into Zichen's body. This conversion speed was very fast, as if the immortal king armor existed for today. As the immortal power entered his body, Zichen's aura skyrocketed again. Soon, he reached another height. Immortal. A true immortal. Immortal energy radiated in all directions with every single movement of his. A feeling of boundless strength surged into Lin Fan's heart. Looking back again, Zichen found that the other 17 people were still trying to enter. He smiled coldly and said, "Everyone, I'm really sorry. I, Zichen, want the energy here." As soon as he finished speaking, Zichen stretched out his hand. Immortal power swirled around his palm. The original pure immortal power was now shrinking in Zichen's palm, finally turning into a palm-sized ball of immortal power. He put away the compressed ball of immortal power and disappeared in a flash, leaving behind a group of stunned leaders. Zichen walked forward, but he didn't know where to go. At this moment, Lei Lan's voice rang out from behind him. "Zichen." Zichen turned around and looked at Lei Lan. "Why are you here?" "I was very worried about you, so I came to take a look," Lei Lan said. "You came at the right time. This is a portion of immortal power. I'll help you become an immortal." As soon as he finished speaking, a light flashed in Zichen's hand. A ball of immortal light flew out from the originally compressed ball of immortal power. The immortal light enveloped Lei Lan. In the next moment, the aura around Lei Lan began to grow stronger, mixed with Lei Lan's surprised cry. A moment later, Lei Lan also became an immortal. A true immortal. "Come, accompany me to a place." Zichen gently waved his hand. A stream of immortal power flew out and directly tore through space. In the next moment, Zichen walked into the void, surrounded by the long river of time. Lei Lan followed beside Zichen, looking around curiously. "Can we go back to the past through here?" Lei Lan looked at some of the images and asked in shock. "It's not a big deal. If you want, you can also do this." Zichen said with a smile, "Don't forget, you've already become a true immortal." Suddenly, Zichen's eyes turned cold. In the long river of time, a scene appeared. It was the scene when he and Lei Wusheng joined forces to fight the white-robed man. Just as the two of them were about to succeed, Lei Zheng Hongtian came. With a sinister smile on his face, a 7-star sacred talisman appeared in his hand. He crushed it without hesitation. "I made you lose your physical body before. This time, it won't happen again." Zichen's expression was cold. His figure flashed and entered the long river of time. In this space-time, Zichen had already felt despair. Unexpectedly, at this moment, Lei Wusheng stood in front of him. At this moment, Lei Wusheng was calm. Obviously, He was ready to die. Unexpectedly, at this moment, a tyrannical force suddenly broke in from another space-time. It grabbed Lei Long's head and held him tightly in its hand. Lei Wuxing, who was waiting for death, was stunned. Lei Zhenghongtian was also stunned. He looked at the person who suddenly appeared, then at the person behind him. He said in surprise, Zi Chen? Because there were two Zi Chen in the field. One was weak and was a 4-star. The other was immortal Yi Piaopiao, who gave him a feeling that he couldn't see through. He didn't know why, but there was a touch of panic in his heart. He slowly stepped back. Lei Zhenghongtian, in the name of an immortal, I take your life. Zi Chen looked at Lei Zhenghongtian and said coldly, die. Lei Zhenghongtian, who had been running for a while, suddenly raised his head and fell down. His vitality was gone. His body turned into countless specks of light and disappeared. Lei Wuxing was still stunned. Lei Lan, who was next to him, widened her eyes and looked at the immortal Zi Chen, who suddenly appeared in shock. Zi Chen turned around and looked at the 4-star Zi Chen. The two of them looked at each other. The 4-star Zi Chen's expression became very vigilant. He said in a deep voice, "Who are you?" The next moment, the 4-star Zi Chen's eyes shone brightly. It was the eye of destruction. Immortal Zi Chen didn't care about the other party's offense. After all, he was also himself. At this time, the two of them just met in the long river of time. He looked at the 4-star Zi Chen and said encouragingly, "Well done. Remember to work harder in the future." The 4-star Zi Chen was still very vigilant. Lei Wuxing was also confused at this moment. He didn't know what was going on. Immortal Zi Chen smiled indifferently. Without further explanation, his figure flashed and disappeared. In the long river of time, immortal Lei Lan was waiting here. When she saw Zi Chen return, she asked, "Where are you going now?" "I'm going to find a friend." Zi Chen said, "I've been looking for him for a long time. He seems to have disappeared from the Saint Spirit realm." Zi Chen, who was traveling in the long river of time, soon found the person he was looking for. Chapter 3595. At this moment, Lei Tianxia was standing in the middle of a planet, setting up many restrictions. On the other side of the planet, Zi Chen, who was only a 1-star saint spirit, was working with the other 3 races to seal the demon spirit dragon. Zi Chen's sudden appearance gave Lei Tianxia a fright. "Why are you here?" Lei Tianxia was stunned. Then he realized something was wrong. "No, you're not Zi Chen." Xuewu stood on Lei Tianxia's shoulder and looked at Zi Chen cautiously. "Don't waste time here. Come with me." Zi Chen shot an immortal light into Lei Tianxia's body. Lei Tianxia's aura skyrocketed. Soon, he became an immortal, just like Lei Lan. Sensing the change in his cultivation, Lei Tianxia asked excitedly, "What's going on?" "Come with me. I'll explain it to you on the way." Compared to the excited Lei Tianxia, Xuewu's eyes were still full of caution. Zi Chen continued to walk in the river of time. He found Tyrant, Demon Ape, Su Mengyaro, Lin Shui, and the others. After finding them, Zi Chen used his own strength to help them reach the immortal realm. All of them were immortals, the strongest in the saint spirit world. Even powerful saint sovereigns had to greet them politely. After that, Zi Chen returned to the Tianwu continent, ready to develop this place. After all, this was where his roots were. In the eyes of the immortal city's ruler, the 18 soul lights were constantly intersecting, forming a vortex that grew bigger and bigger. At the center of the vortex, a faint black light could be seen. That was a crack to another world. At this moment, it was being torn apart by a mysterious force, as if it could break open at any time. The ruler's expression became more and more excited. His complacent laughter could be heard everywhere. The 18 people, including Zi Chen, stood there motionless like puppets. At this moment, in another mysterious space, there were several people standing there. These people's auras were restrained, but they still made this space unstable. If the city lord could see the outside world, he would definitely discover that these people were standing right in his path. The only way to open the passageway to the immortal world was through this place. Among these people, there was only one that Zi Chen recognized. He was Lei Zhenku. Back then, It was him and senior Lei Di who had brought him back to the Holy Thunder clan. It was said that the other party was from the previous era and was known as the strongest person in the Holy Thunder clan. Beside him stood a black-robed old man from the sacred shadow sky. The black-robed old man looked at the distorted space below and asked, "Right now, we can only look here and can't see what's happening below. Are you sure there's no problem?" Recalling the news he had just received, Lei Zhengke said, "There shouldn't be any problems. Even now, you still haven't told me who that person is." The black-robed old man asked again. Lei Zhengke said, "In the distant past, they are all old friends." There was obvious curiosity in the eyes of the others, but Lei Zhengke clearly had no intention of explaining. It was already extremely rare for him to say the words old friend. If even the Holy Shadow Sky couldn't find out about this, it could be seen that this was a true ancient existence. But would things really go smoothly this time? Zichen was still galloping in his own world. Here, he was invincible. His friends were also invincible. Every day, he would drink tea and chat, accompany Su Mengyaro and the others to walk around the Saint Spirit realm. This was the life he yearned for the most. There was no need to cultivate, no need to deceive each other, no need to compete for benefits, only their own interests and leisure. Zichen enjoyed this kind of life very much, so he didn't feel tired of it. Until one day, he met a person. The other party was also an immortal, and he knew him. This made his expression change. After seeing Zichen, the other party seemed to be greatly relieved and said, "I finally found you. You are the leader of the star race back then." Zichen looked at the other party. Of course, he wouldn't forget that the turning point of his life was that adventure, which ultimately led to his current realm. Back then, the leader of the star race Xing Wuhan said, "So, in your eyes, many years have passed. Time flies. It has been at least 10,000 years since that day." Zichen said, "There was only one opportunity back then, and I have taken it all. How can you still become an immortal?" Xing Wuhan smiled bitterly when he heard this. "Immortal? In fact, I am still a 6-star sacred spirit." "Impossible." Zichen cried out involuntarily, "You are obviously an immortal. Use your pupil technique and look at me carefully." Zichen's eyes flashed. He hadn't used the Eye of Destruction for many years. Because he was invincible, and no one dared to challenge him. In this eye that could see through all illusions, Xing Wuhan was still an immortal. "You are joking with me, right?" The light in Zichen's eyes disappeared and he said with dissatisfaction, "It seems that you are too confident in yourself." Xing Wuhan pointed to his heart and said, "Now, please forget your unique pupil technique. Touch here, ask yourself, and use your heart to perceive everything." "What do you mean?" Zichen asked. "Use your heart to perceive my realm." Xing Wuhan suddenly said anxiously, "Hurry up, I don't have much time." "You want to sneak up on me?" Zichen said. "If you want, I can break my arms now." Xing Wuhan said in a deep voice, "Zichen, quickly ask yourself." "I don't have much time, and neither do you." Zichen closed his eyes, but he soon opened them again. Because he didn't know where to start. Xing Wuhan said again, "You are still rational even now. This is very inconceivable because you are only at the 4-star realm. But I believe that you, who have such a powerful soul, must have warned you in the depths of your soul. Those warnings were just ignored by you. Now that you think about it, it makes you feel uncomfortable." Zichen began to ask himself. The first time he felt uncomfortable was the first time he saw himself. At that time, his eyes were full of vigilance. Even when he saved Lei Wusheng, his vigilance was still the same. Now that he thought about it, other than vigilance, there seemed to be some other emotion in his eyes. Or was it a warning? Apart from that, the second time he felt uncomfortable was when he saw Xuewu. Before Xuewu was born, the essence blood it absorbed almost took away half of Zichen's life. Their souls were closely connected. According to Xuewu's perception, of course it knew that he was Zichen. But Zichen didn't see joy or excitement in its eyes, only vigilance. Or rather, it was a warning. He thought it was vigilance. After asking himself, Zichen quickly began to trace back to the source, and then he thought of an even more important point. Where was the ruler of the immortal city? He was the instigator of this incident. Then where was he? What benefits did he get? In an instant, Zichen woke up. Chapter 3596. After Xing Wuhan's reminder, Zichen finally came to his senses. The ruler of the immortal city laughed so harshly. At this moment, Zichen discovered that his soul and body had been separated. He was floating in the sky with 17 other soul auras beside him. One of them was Xing Wuhan. "What do you see?" Xing Wuhan asked, using soul voice transmission. "I see bones," Zichen said, "countless bones under the platform." Zichen's doubts had been answered. The natives he had not seen for a long time were all dead. The soul power they had absorbed earlier was not the power of the soul-gathering crystal mine, but the souls of the dead natives. No wonder there were all kinds of negative emotions. In the center of the vortex formed by the soul power, a black dot of light appeared. In that black dot of light was an endless void, as if it was opening a passage to another world. Perhaps they could really reach the immortal world from here, but the scene described by the ruler of the immortal city was all fake. There was no beautiful future. They were just sacrifices after opening the passage. "Feel your soul," Xing Wuhan transmitted again. Zichen carefully sensed the state of his soul, and then his mind shook violently. At this moment, the ruler of the immortal city looked up at the sky. The smile on his face disappeared, and there was a look of doubt in his eyes. "His senses are very sharp. Don't show any flaws," Xing Wuhan warned again. Zichen's mind was incomparably shaken because he discovered that his soul was actually in a complete state. Or rather, it was in a complete state. Under such circumstances, if he died, it would mean that he was completely dead. It was obviously different from the Holy Spirits from before. There was no possibility of resurrection after this death. At this moment, in the Tianwu world, Zichen's lush green world was rapidly losing the energy of heaven and earth, and it was becoming dilapidated. Even though there were countless spirit trees gathering spirit energy for it, the world was still rapidly deteriorating. The laws of this place had become very chaotic, and all kinds of strange phenomena were occurring. Storms, lightning, and endless seawater poured in. Panic spread throughout the city. Jolena walked out, sensing the changes in the world. Her eyes were filled with worry. On the other side, Lei Zhenghong immediately walked out of the room. The changes in Zichen's world helped him see this place clearly. The world has become like this. Looks like that guy is in danger. He might even die because of this. Lei Zhenghong Fang became excited. He secretly thought about what method he should use next to explore the secrets of this world. In other words, he could take this opportunity to take this world for himself. Knowing the situation he was in, Zichen's expression turned ugly. He hadn't expected that the ruler of the immortal city would have such a remarkable ability to forcefully summon his soul to this place. So, out of the 18 people, only the 2 of them were conscious. Although the souls of the others still exist, they have already lost their consciousness. It could be said that they are already dead. Xing Wuhan said, "But we still have a chance." Zichen's mind was rapidly searching for a way to defeat the enemy. "Do you have a pseudo-venerable seal on you?" Xing Wuhan asked. Only then did Zichen realize that when he first came in, Lei Wuxing had given him a life-saving item. As expected, Brother Wuxing still thinks highly of you. Sensing Zichen's soul fluctuation, Xing Wuhan said, "I also have one on me. If we join forces, we should be able to break through this situation. But before that, I need you to agree to a condition." "What condition?" Zichen asked. "I have a younger brother called Xingye. If you have the chance, I hope you can go to the Sacred Planet Clan to see him." These words sounded more like his last words. Zichen's soul was looking at him. "Don't think too much. He doesn't have many friends, but he's not a bad person. I think you two might be able to become friends." Xing Wuhan's voice sounded very relaxed. "My only brother is extremely talented. As his elder brother, I can't even compare to 1/10 of him. So I'm very proud. I hope he can have a friend like you." Zichen nodded and said, "If I have the chance, I will go." "Good. Listen to my arrangements. When this space is completely open, Our souls will return together and activate the pseudo-venerable seal. Zichen nodded again. Now, all that was left was to wait. Because of the strange fluctuations from before, the immortal city lord no longer laughed. Instead, he stared nervously at the sky. At this point, he naturally didn't want any accidents to happen. This was a matter of great importance. There couldn't be any mistakes. Fortunately, the fluctuations disappeared. The 18 souls entwined together and gathered in the vortex. The black light in the center of the vortex began to expand, and a real passage appeared. The immortal city lord became even more nervous. Zichen and Xing Wuhan were the same. The black passage was expanding, and it could already accommodate one person. Zichen's soul began to weaken, as if there was an invisible force that was destroying his consciousness. This caused him to become somewhat vigilant in his heart. Don't panic, Xing Wuhan reminded again. You must stay calm. We only have one chance. One and only chance. Zichen could hear that Xing Wuhan's soul was also weakening. As the passage expanded, Zichen's soul aura became even weaker. His consciousness could disappear at any time. He felt that he couldn't hold on any longer. At this moment, a ray of light appeared in the black passage. It's the immortal world. It's really connected to the immortal world. The immortal city lord's excited voice sounded again. Return. At this moment, Xing Wuhan's voice sounded. His soul instantly returned and activated the pseudo-venerable seal. When Zichen heard this and reacted, Xing Wuhan's soul had already returned and was ready to attack. A real star appeared in front of his eyes, carrying with it a terrifying aura as it whizzed forward. Space distorted as if it was being torn apart by a strange force. You're courting death. The immortal city lord sensed the abnormality and shouted angrily. A ray of light lit up on the platform under Xing Wuhan's feet. Then, long spikes grew out of the immortal king armor on his body. Poof, poof, poof. The long spikes pierced through Xing Wuhan's body in an instant. There were close to 100 of them, completely piercing through his body. However, the Xing Chen didn't stop. It whistled forward and hit the immortal city lord. A defensive light shield appeared in front of the immortal city lord, blocking the Xing Chen. I didn't expect you to be able to wake up. However, the passage is about to form. It's useless to have you. As he spoke, the immortal city lord's face gradually turned pale. Clearly, resisting the Xing Chen's attack had consumed a lot of his energy. After all, it was equivalent to an attack from a sacred venerate. Even if it was suppressed by the rules here, it was still equivalent to an attack from a 9-star saint spirit. Even he, who was truly invincible, felt strained. At this moment, another powerful aura came from the other side. Chapter 3597. By the time Xing Wuhan's soul returned to warn Zichen, it was already too late. As a result, Zichen successfully missed the other party's counterattack. Just as the immortal city lord was careless while blocking Xing Wuhan's attack, Zichen, whose soul had returned, activated the pseudo-venerable seal. The bracelet on his wrist shattered into pieces, and a ray of lightning shot out from it, heading straight for Qin Nan. Zichen's eyes lit up. The light was blinding, and the lightning bolts surged forward. There was a huge boom. Under the shocked gaze of the immortal city lord, the defense in front of him was instantly shattered. Then, Xing Chen and the lightning bolts landed on the other party's body. A blood-curdling scream reverberated in this space. There was a strong sense of unwillingness in it. This was truly invincible. He had encountered a power that exceeded the limits of this world. Lightning filled his body, wreaking havoc. Xing Chen's powerful attack destroyed the body. The immortal city lord's body exploded with a bang. Nothing unexpected happened. Because the pseudo-venerable seal was too strong. In the sky, the 16 streaks of soul light that were still rotating stopped the moment the celestial city lord died. Then, the vortex dissipated, disappearing from the world. At the same time, the 16 immortal king armors, as well as their leaders, disappeared with the wind. The 16 strongest leaders of the various races turned into nothingness. They had fallen. The immense pressure on Zichen's body disappeared at this moment, and he immediately flew forward. That was where Xing Wuhan was standing. "How are you?" He had guessed that Xing Wuhan would return early. It could be said that Xing Wuhan had used his own life to buy time for Zi Chen to break out of this situation. Xing Wuhan, whose body was pierced by countless long thorns, slowly shook his head and said weakly, "I can't do it. Remember what you promised me. You must remember. My brother is a very good person. It's just that he rarely interacts with others and is too introverted." After saying this, his body began to disintegrate into specks of light. Zi Chen looked at this scene with a complicated expression. "You don't have to blame yourself. I've died a long time ago. What's awake is just a strand of my will. This will dissipate sooner or later, so I didn't die to save you." After saying this, Xing Wuhan's soul disappeared into thin air. At this point, Xing Wuhan no longer existed in the world. That being said, the reason he was able to survive was indeed because of Xing Wuhan. Xing Wuhan could have allowed him to get lost in the void until he died. With the death of the ruler of the immortal city, all of the concealment he had put in place had disappeared. The white bones under his feet were clearly visible. Countless living beings had died here. Zi Chen's emotions were very complicated. Clearly, the soul-gathering crystal mine was fake. Everything was part of the immortal city ruler's plan to open up this place. He raised his head and looked above. Due to the disappearance of his spiritual strength, the speck of light that had appeared in the black hole was also slowly fading away. The black hole slowly disappeared. Everything returned to normal. The surroundings were still filled with surging soul power, rising up like smoke. Without the suppression, Zi Chen could clearly feel the resentment within. Clearly, these people were his subordinates when they were alive. However, for Zi Chen, this was also a great opportunity because his dark ghost soul-devouring technique was very unique. All of the negative souls that entered would be obliterated and turned into pure spiritual strength. However, he was not greedy for these bloody opportunities. Instead, he waved his sleeves and said, "Disperse." A light breeze blew past, and the waves of spiritual strength dissipated into thin air. This could be considered a kind of relief. After these souls completely disappeared, the countless white bones below also scattered with the wind. Clearly, there were no more opportunities here. Zi Chen planned to leave. Unexpectedly, at this moment, a strange aura fluctuation came from below. This was a spiritual strength fluctuation. It was very pure, without any distracting thoughts. As soon as this spiritual strength fluctuation appeared, the soul-gathering crystal in Zi Chen's spiritual sea seemed to be attracted. Zi Chen's face revealed a puzzled expression as he sized up the area below. Everything was normal there. His figure descended and came to the bottom. Then, his eyes lit up. It was the Eye of Destruction. However, when he used the Eye of Destruction again, he was not as confident as before. The reason why he fell for it this time was that Zi Chen trusted the Eye of Destruction too much, so he let down his guard against everything. Now he knew that there were times when his special Eye of Destruction could not see through. There was nothing around. Everything seemed normal. Even the soul-gathering crystal gradually returned to normal. However, Zi Chen clearly felt that the dark ghost soul-devouring technique had become more active after coming here. Or was there something here that the Eye of Destruction could not see? After pondering for a while, Zi Chen began to draw talismans. Ghost Spirit Saint Talismans. A total of 81 Ghost Spirit Saint Talismans appeared and then shattered, turning into little ghosts. Then Zi Chen used his soul to signal them to attack the surroundings. The ghosts screamed and flew in all directions. After a while, they all disappeared. Obviously, there was nothing. Just as Zi Chen was about to leave, he saw streams of spiritual strength suddenly appear and converge into his spiritual sea. These spiritual strengths were very weak, but they gave Zi Chen endless hope. These were souls brought back by the ghost spirits, which meant that there was indeed something strange here. He flew up again, then carried Lei Lan over and placed her beside him. For some reason, she still did not wake up. Then, Zi Chen continued to draw talismans. After the 81 Ghost Spirit Saint Talismans appeared, they would turn into ghosts and attack the surrounding things on their own. After they disappeared, some visible spiritual strength would appear and enter Zichen's spiritual sea, strengthening his soul. However, compared to the cost, Zichen's gain was too small. This should be the first time he had lost money since he learned the Ghost Spirit Saint talismans. Fortunately, he had enough holy talismans, and he did not gain anything after coming here. He was obviously unwilling to leave just like that. Zichen's hands were unpredictable. Like a dragon flying and a phoenix dancing, the Ghost Spirit Saint talismans formed one after another, emitting a black light. The 81 holy talismans formed and then shattered. The ghosts screamed and left, launching powerful attacks into the surrounding void. When they disappeared, there would be spiritual strength to replenish them. After wasting nearly 400 saint talismans, Zichen could clearly feel that the amount of soul energy he was receiving back had gradually increased. Soon, another 400 holy talismans were consumed. Bit by bit, Zichen's spiritual strength also increased by a lot. When the number of holy talismans consumed exceeded 1,000, Zichen's spiritual sea suddenly trembled. Immediately after, a powerful aura surged out from his body. This aura had already surpassed 4-star. Chapter 3598. It hadn't been long since Zichen had broken through to 4-star. Logically speaking, he shouldn't have broken through so quickly. However, after coming here, the Ghost Spirit Saint talisman had repeatedly provided great help to Zichen's soul. In addition, Zichen had been tricked by the immortal city ruler. His dark ghost devouring technique had taken the opportunity to refine many souls. Coupled with the consumption of more than 1,000 Ghost Spirit Saint talismans, Zichen had taken another step forward. His soul had risen from 4-star to 5-star. The aura of a 5-star divine spirit was released from his body. This time, Zichen had successfully broken through. However, it was obvious that this was just the beginning. Zichen sat down cross-legged. Then, many saint crystals appeared beside him. After these saint crystals appeared, they immediately shattered. The energy contained in them surged out, forming an energy storm around him that was absorbed by Zichen. During a breakthrough, the speed of absorbing energy was the fastest. This was also an opportunity that could only be found by chance. After the first wave of energy was consumed, what appeared in front of Zichen again was no longer saint crystals, but immortal stones. Among the many immortal stones, there were many high-quality immortal stones. They were the size of a human head and shone brightly. A powerful devouring force came from Zichen's body and fell on the immortal stones. Then, the energy contained in the immortal stones decreased at a speed visible to the naked eye. When the energy of the immortal stones entered the sea of knowledge, it would become soul energy. After being refined by the dark ghost devouring technique, it would become a pure soul. When it entered the body, it would become physical energy. When it entered abdomen, it would become lightning energy. Under the continuous absorption of energy, the accumulated energy in his dantian had finally undergone a change. From 4-star to 5-star. At this moment, Zichen had truly become a 5-star divine spirit. The breakthrough continued. The energy of countless immortal stones entered Zichen's body. His physical body, abdomen, and soul were constantly strengthening with the help of the immortal stones. This was a rare opportunity. Zichen didn't want to miss it. Fortunately, there was no danger here for the time being. Lei Lan was still lying beside him, showing no signs of waking up. The energy from the immortal stones in the surroundings formed an intense storm. Zichen sat cross-legged in the center of the storm, absorbing the energy from all directions. This crazy absorption continued for several hours. Zichen's status as a 5-star holy spirit had completely stabilized, and he had also made considerable progress. It was the same for the soul and body. After stabilizing his realm, Zichen stood up. Lei Lan still hadn't woken up, even though his breakthrough had caused a huge commotion. Fortunately, her breathing was stable and her vitality was stable. She was only in a deep sleep and nothing had happened to her. After breaking through, his soul had become even more powerful, and his perception had naturally become sharper. There was something strange about this place. Light swirled in his eyes as he used the Eye of Destruction again. But this time, he saw it extremely clearly. There were more threads of rules in the surroundings, like a restriction, isolating and suppressing this place. As expected, a joyful smile flashed across Zichen's face. The immortal spear in his hand reappeared, and he slashed forward. The ruler of the immortal city was dead, and the immortal king armor had become controllable again. It could be considered a true treasure armor now. The moment Zichen attacked, a beam of light of destruction appeared in the eye of destruction, stopping the restriction in front of him. Then, where the immortal spear passed, the restriction shattered. A huge gap appeared. A beam of light flew out from Zichen's body and disappeared with Lei Lan. That huge gap disappeared along with it. After breaking the restriction, Zichen saw a mansion. The moment he saw the mansion clearly, his eyes lit up again. This time, he didn't use his eye of destruction. Only shock appeared on his face. The soul power in the surroundings was so dense that it almost couldn't be dispersed. If his eyesight wasn't wrong, then the mansion in front of him was built with soul-gathering crystals. The Holy Thunder clan was known as one of the 4 great sacred clans and had a deep foundation. However, soul-gathering crystals were still very rare to the Holy Thunder clan. But now, Zichen saw a mansion made of soul-gathering crystals. Even if it was built with the lowest grade of soul-gathering crystals, it was still a very terrifying thing. Not to mention whether there were other fortuitous encounters in this place, just by taking away this mansion, the harvest he would obtain would be much more than what he had obtained before. Moreover, this mansion didn't look like it was built with ordinary soul-gathering crystals. He didn't know when this mansion was left behind. There was no name on it. So, Zichen walked forward and came to the mansion's door. Before he could reach out to push the door opened inwards by itself. The immortal spear in Zichen's hand reappeared, and he looked ahead vigilantly. A person stood behind the opened door. It was an old man in a grey robe, and his back was a little hunched. "Greetings, my lord." After the old man saw Zichen through the open door, he excitedly bowed to him. Zichen's expression changed slightly. He took a few steps back, and the immortal spear in his hand began to shine. Just a moment ago, he sensed the aura that flowed out of the old man's body. It was as terrifying as the abyss. The old man looked up at Zichen with an excited expression. Zichen was still vigilant. He asked, "Who are you?" The old man was slightly stunned. A light flashed in his eyes, and he said, "This old servant is the spirit of this place." "You're the owner of this mansion?" Zichen asked again. The old man nodded. "You can say that. No one has come here for many years." Zichen continued to ask, "Why are you calling me lord?" The old man's emotions had completely returned to normal. He answered, "When I left back then, the old master said that everyone who comes here is a lord." "Old master?" Zichen's expression changed when he heard this, but then he understood. This mansion was built by someone, so of course there would be an owner. He continued to ask, "Where's your old master?" The old man looked at Zichen and said, "The old master has passed away. I've been waiting for a new master." Zichen's eyes lit up. He said, "Is there a new master now?" "There wasn't before, but there is now." The old man cupped his fists at Zichen and bowed. "This old servant greets the master." Zichen was very happy, but he quickly calmed down. How could there be such a good thing in the world? The scene of him becoming an immortal was still vivid in his mind. Therefore, he used the eye of destruction again and looked ahead. The old man was real. This soul-gathering crystal mansion was also real. With the previous example, Zichen no longer trusted his eye technique. Therefore, under the old man's puzzled gaze, the Holy Spirit flying dagger appeared beside him and kept spinning around his body. At the same time, he used the defense of the immortal king armor to the extreme. Chapter 3599. The only reason he had been able to wake up was because of Xing Wuhan's warning. He began to ask himself. But during that process, because it had been a long time and he had been warned many times, he had easily discovered the problem. But now, he only saw an old man. Apart from that, there were no other familiar faces. This made him feel that it was quite difficult. Zichen looked at Lei Lan. She still hadn't woken up. Did this mean that there was no way to break out of this situation? Xing Wuhan hadn't died, and the other leaders hadn't died either. Was this just a hallucination? As he began to ask himself, Zichen's doubts grew even stronger. The old man stood there, looking at Zichen with his eyes closed. His expression was complicated, and he didn't speak for a long time. After standing there for 15 minutes, seeing that Zichen still hadn't made a move, the old man said, "Master, how should I address you?" Zichen opened his eyes when he heard the voice. The old man stood there respectfully. It really wasn't a hallucination. His expression began to change. The old man smiled and said, "This place contains extremely dense soul energy. It can replenish one's soul at any time, allowing one to stay awake at all times. How could it be a hallucination?" Zichen shook his head, not daring to agree. The soul energy on the platform was naturally very dense, but didn't he still fall for it? And he almost died. Then, does that mean that the soul-gathering crystal mine is real? Zichen, who was filled with doubts, asked again. "You can say that." The old man nodded and said, "Actually, there was only one residence here. It's just that too much time has passed, and the soul energy in the surroundings hasn't dissipated for a long time, forming a mine. Since the mine is real, why didn't the immortal city ruler use the energy here to break the barrier, but instead killed his countless citizens?" Zichen asked. The old man shook his head and said, "I don't know what master means. This place has been sealed for many years, and I have never interacted with outsiders. I don't know what happened outside. Also, the seal here is extremely powerful. Ordinary people can't open it." Looking at the still frowning Zichen, the old man said, "Master, you were the first to come here. According to the old master's last wish, this place is master's. Why don't I show you around?" Although he could not accept what was happening in front of him, the old man appeared very kind, so he said, "Don't call me master anymore. It's too awkward. Just call me Zichen." "Yes, sir." The old man lowered his head, but his body was trembling, and the look in his eyes changed drastically. Zichen walked forward, and the old man led him on a tour. The area here was not big, but according to the old man, it was made with a whole piece of soul-gathering crystal, which shocked Zichen. During this time, Zichen entered the room and saw many decorations. They were all carved out of soul-gathering crystals and emitted an oppressive soul light. The density of spiritual strength here was beyond imagination. If Zichen cultivated here for a period of time, he was confident that he would be able to break through from 5th to 6th. After all, the soul was the foundation of cultivation. Seeing the excitement in Zichen's eyes, the old man said, "Although this place already belongs to my lord, everything in the surroundings is in a sealed state. Therefore, before the seal is opened, my lord cannot take away anything here." "Can't take anything away?" When Zichen heard this, his face was filled with regret. Obviously, this was a real treasure mountain. However, he could only look at it and could not even touch it. "Sir, you can stay here and cultivate. Once the seal is unsealed, you can take this mansion away," the old man said. "How long will it take to break the seal?" Zichen asked. "If I were to break the seal alone, it would take dozens or hundreds of years. Moreover, there are also soul-gathering crystals gathered outside. It would take a long time to find a way to this place." Zichen's expression changed slightly, and he said, "You mean this is the core of the mine? There are other soul-gathering crystals outside?" "Of course." The old man said, "If you have a force behind you, sir, then you can leave the mine outside to them. As for this mansion, it belongs to you alone. It can only belong to you. Sir, you can compare this mansion to a soul weapon. Once the seal is unsealed, you can take it away." Zichen nodded, and he could not suppress the joy in his eyes. Obviously, he was going to stay in this mansion alone. Looking at the objects here, Zichen could only look at them, but he could not take them. He felt a little uncomfortable. These ornaments should be comparable to upper soul-gathering crystals, right? Zichen's heart was a little sour because he only had one middle-grade soul-amassing crystal at the moment. "They are indeed upper soul-gathering crystals," the old man said, nodding. Zichen was a little surprised. There were so many ornaments here, and all of them were upper soul-gathering crystals. The original owner was too rich. Chen was not willing to leave just like that, so he asked again, "Is there nothing I can take away? Why should I take these things away?" The old man asked, puzzled. Chen said, "These are upper soul-gathering crystals. They are priceless, okay? I'm just a little divine spirit who has just broken through to 5-star, and I only have a medium soul-gathering crystal. How can I compare with your rich master?" A strange look flashed in the old man's eyes, but he finally understood what Chen meant. "If you don't mind, sir, I have a little thing here. I hope you can accept it." With a flash of light, a crystal the size of a baby's fist appeared in the old man's hand. It was the soul-gathering crystal, which was emitting a dazzling light. Sensing the power in it, which was much stronger than that of a medium soul-gathering crystal, Chen did not mind. He smiled so widely that his eyes almost became slits. "This is a little thing that I used to play with. It's about pseudo-superb. I hope you don't mind it." "How can it be?" Chen immediately took the soul-gathering crystal. How could he dislike a pseudo-superb that was more advanced than upper soul-gathering crystal? He could not be more happy. So far, he did not come in vain. In order to avoid any trouble, he refined it on the spot. The old man was stunned. Apparently, he did not expect his master to be so anxious. He was indeed different. However, such a master seemed to be more flexible and easier to get close to. After refining this pseudo-superb soul-gathering crystal, Chen had a medium soul-gathering crystal. Once he took it out for auction, it would definitely be fought over by countless divine talisman masters. In addition, he did not let everyone down and really found the mineral vein. Now, it was naturally time to leave. "I have to go. Can you tell me how to break the seal here?" Chen asked. "With this ancient token in hand, you can reach the place where the seal is. When you break the seal and go all the way to this place, you can take away this mansion." The old man said, "It was a coincidence that you were able to reach here this time. It might not be the same next time." Chen nodded to show that he understood. Chapter 3600. Leijing Hongtian, who was scared away by Chen, was one of the few who survived. However, he suddenly stopped halfway through the flight of stairs. He saw two people standing at the bottom of the stairs. He vaguely remembered that these two seemed to be related to Chen. They were from the Death Prison Pirates. That was an unlikable force. Looking at Leijing Hongtian, Ink smiled faintly and said, "If I'm not wrong, your name is Leijing Hongtian, right?" "Humph." Leijing Hongtian snorted and said disdainfully, "You're just a death prison pirate. How dare you mention my name?" Ink's expression didn't change. He smiled and said, "You're really conceited. Usually, someone like you can be sold for a good price. However, I have other things to discuss with you today, so I won't sell you." "Just the two of you?" Leijing Hongtian's expression was still disdainful. He was already a 6-star holy spirit. Even if Lei Wusheng stood in front of him, he was confident that he could fight him and not be at a disadvantage. Ink glanced at the 6th young master and said, "You haven't had enough fun all the way, right? Now is your chance." Before the 6th young master could respond, Leijing Hongtian said proudly, "Cut the crap. You two come together." In fact, it was the tradition of the Death Prison Pirates to rush up together. They only cared about benefits and nothing else. However, this time, Ink didn't come. The 6th young master went up alone. A powerful aura surged out from his body. Black flames began to burn, and the aura of the spirit extinguishing technique burst out. Sensing this aura, Leijing Hongtian's expression changed dramatically. After a quarter of an hour, the turbulent energy dissipated, and the distorted space gradually returned to normal. Leijing Hongtian fell to the ground with blood flowing from the corner of his mouth. His eyes were full of shock. He was very strong. After reaching the 6-star Holy Spirit, his combat power had increased again. But the enemy was stronger. The 6th young master looked at Leijing Hongtian and said coldly, "I finally know why you can't reach the extreme core. Because you're too weak." In a one-on-one battle, Leijing Hongtian had lost to someone of the same level as him. When he heard the other party's taunts, his expression turned ugly. Moji stepped forward and patted Leijing Hongtian's shoulder. He smiled and said, "Don't worry, This time we won't have any ideas about you. On the contrary, we will cooperate with you. That's because we have a common enemy. Lei Hongtian raised his head and looked at the ink. His previous arrogance was gone. Our common enemy is Zi Chen, Ink said. The phenomenon here has disappeared. I'm guessing that Zi Chen has reached the top. You just came down from above. How's the situation there? Lei Hongtian's expression began to change. Ink spoke again. Don't worry, we have no ill intentions towards you, because our target is only Zi Chen. He's my enemy, and he's also your enemy, so we can work together to deal with Zi Chen. After a slight pause, Moji continued, that's because I have a way to instantly destroy the reputation he gained in the Sacred Thunder Tribe, turning him from a meritorious official to a disreputable one, turning him into a rat that everyone hates. Really? Lei Hongtian's eyes lit up. Of course. Even if you don't believe me, you should believe in the credibility of the Death Prison's pirates. But I need your cooperation first. Also, you have to tell me what happened inside so that I can be mentally prepared, said Ink. Lei Hongtian's eyes were filled with hatred as he said, as long as you can ruin Zi Chen's reputation, I'll cooperate with you in any way. Now that Lei Wuxing is dead, there's only him and Lei Lan left. But whether they can get the ultimate opportunity is still unknown. Then there's no problem. Ink nodded and said, we'll go back and wait for him in the city. You also have to be prepared. Whether you can take advantage of Zi Chen's downfall to rise will depend on your good fortune. Zi Chen carried Lei Lan on his back and left the mineral vein. The discovery of the mineral vein this time was not only a great opportunity for him, but also for the entire Holy Thunder clan. Without a doubt, the Holy Thunder clan would be the one with the biggest harvest this time. And his contribution this time was definitely not small. But the Holy Thunder clan had nurtured him, and Zi Chen was willing to contribute everything. When he came to the city, the immortal light was still there, but it was not as scary as before. He believed that it would disappear soon. He smiled faintly and leaped out of the city. Next, he would meet up with Lei Wuxuang and inform the Holy Thunder clan to send more experts here. Suddenly, a voice sounded. Zi Chen, come down for a chat. Looking at the people below, Zi Chen frowned. They were the pirates of the death prison. Whether it was Ink or the person beside him, they were all experts. But along the way, the two of them did not make a move. Zi Chen even asked around and found that the pirates of the death prison had almost no harvest this time. Then what was their purpose of coming here? Of course, Zi Chen ignored the Ink and continued to fly forward. Don't you want to know why the person behind you is always in a deep sleep? Ink said again with a faint smile on his face. Zi Chen stopped. Lei Lan had not woken up for a long time, and he had been very puzzled. But he did not feel that her life was in danger, so he just treated it as a normal deep sleep. Now it seemed that there was a problem. He landed and stared at Ink and said, what do you mean? Ink smiled faintly and said, why don't we make a deal? Zi Chen shook his head and said coldly, not interested. The smile on Ink's face did not diminish, and he said again, actually, whether you are interested or not, you should listen to what I have to say. Because this is the basic courtesy of us, isn't it? Zi Chen said indifferently, I don't need to be polite to scoundrels like you. Zi Chen, pay attention to your tone, the sixth young master said coldly. Zi Chen looked at him with a murderous look in his eyes. Do you want to die? A cold aura surged out of Zi Chen's body. Sensing this aura, the sixth young master's expression changed, and he exclaimed, you broke through? Ink's eyes lit up, and a smile appeared on his face. He was not sure about some of the news before. It seems that you really did get the soul-gathering crystal load. Then, please hand it over. Before Zi Chen could refuse, Ink continued, I have a method that can destroy all of a person's soul, making them completely dead and unable to revive. As he spoke, he looked at Lei Lan, who was on Zi Chen's back, and a fierce look appeared in his eyes for the first time. Chapter 3601. Feeling the fierceness of Ink for the first time, Zi Chen couldn't help laughing and said, are you kidding me? Ink asked back, what do you think? Zi Chen still had a sneer on his face. Ink said, to tell you the truth, we've long guessed that you can get the soul-gathering crystal load, so we've done something to Lei Lan. Well, it's true that we didn't do a good job in this matter, but you also know that it's a serious matter, so it's not a big deal to go against our will once. Obviously, Zichen couldn't continue to pretend that he didn't know. He said indifferently, "You're very sincere, but I'm sorry, the soul-gathering crystal lode you mentioned doesn't exist at all. It's just a trap that the immortal city's ruler wants to kill everyone." Ink said, "I believe the second half of your sentence, but I don't believe the first half. If you don't hand over the soul-gathering crystal lode today, then Lei Lan will die with no possibility of resurrection." Zichen said, "Not to mention that I don't control the lode, even if I do you think Lei Lan's life can be exchanged for it? Not to mention Lei Lan, even I myself am not worth this price. Lei Lan is the only disciple of Lei Di Saint, and I believe that you will save her." Moji waved his hand and interrupted Zichen's words. "You don't have to use Saint Lei Di to intimidate me. In my heart, I respect Saint Lei Di very much. But this is a matter of great importance, so we have to do this. Even if Saint Lei Di attacks us, Saint Lei Di will be there to stop him." Ink pointed at Zichen and then at himself, saying, "Now there's only a deal between you and me. Hand over the soul-gathering crystal lode, and Lei Lan will live. If not, Lei Lan will die. Don't think about killing us, because even if we die, Lei Lan will die too. Moreover, we will be resurrected, but Lei Lan can't." Zichen was silent. Now he finally understood why the Death Prison's pirates didn't take action. It turned out that they had been betting on him all along. The reason why they didn't compete for other resources was that they didn't want to be the first one. They could only think of the greatest opportunity. Looking at the silent Zichen, Ink spoke again, "Stalling for time is useless, because we have found an ally. He will persuade the people of the Holy Thunder Clan, so no one will come. Even if there is, so what if reinforcements have arrived? At most, the two of us will die, but Lei Lan, the only disciple of holy revered Lei Di, will have to accompany us." He didn't use a cold voice to threaten Zichen. He just spoke calmly, but the pressure he gave Zichen wasn't small at all. Naturally, there was a struggle in his heart. That was because that was a soul-amassing crystal mine, which was priceless. Once it was fully revealed, all forces would be tempted. Rather than calling it a deal, it would be better to call it a negotiation. The moment Zichen sat on the table, he had already lost. Because he cared, and even more because he was worried. On the other hand, his enemy was fearless. The smile on Ink's face was still the same, and he didn't say a word of nonsense. At their level, they could naturally distinguish between good and evil. If he stood on the opposite side today, then this negotiation would definitely fail, because no one's value was higher than a soul-amassing crystal mine. If someone said that the value of a human life was higher than a soul-amassing crystal mine, then it would definitely be a huge joke. Ink wouldn't. Most people wouldn't. But he wasn't Zichen, and most people weren't Zichen either. Therefore, Zichen would. And in this world, there must be someone more precious than a soul-amassing crystal mine, and that was Lei Lan. Or rather, Zichen's friends. Thinking of this, Ink felt a little emotional. To be able to become friends with such a person who valued friendship and righteousness should be a great joy in life. Unfortunately, the two of them stood on different sides, and they could never become friends. The silent Zichen finally spoke, "How can I believe you? I've given it to you this time, but who can guarantee that you won't continue to threaten me with Lei Lan next time?" Ink said, "If I tell you, you won't believe what we, the Death Prison pirates, have said. But think about it, you've given us the most precious mine. If we harm Lei Lan again, then Holy Master Lei Di will definitely find trouble with us at that time. Although we also have Holy Masters, if a Holy Master insists on destroying a place, no one should be able to stop him, right?" A soul-amassing crystal mine indicated an unlimited future. Once it was brought back to the Holy Thunder Clan, it was believed that the Holy Thunder Clan would definitely develop rapidly. Perhaps it would only take them 10,000 years to surpass the other three clans and become the most powerful force in the Holy Spirit sector. However, Zichen was very unwilling to give up such a great opportunity just like that. But so what? Zichen glanced at Lei Lan, who was still unconscious behind him, and shook his head with a wry smile. He had an extra token in his hand and directly threw it to Ink. The sixth young master stood aside and didn't say anything. At this moment, when he saw Chen throw the token, his eyes almost popped out. Earlier, when Ink told him his plan, he didn't think it would succeed at all because no one would be stupid enough to give up a solar-massing crystal mine for one person. But today, he saw it. The moment the token was in his hand, even Ink had a touch of excitement in his eyes. The token was very light, but the moment it was in his hand, it was extremely heavy, and his breathing had become a little faster. This can't be fake, right? Ink's hand holding the token was slightly trembling, and his originally calm voice was trembling slightly at this moment. You can tell if it's real or not. Chen said indifferently, what did Lei Lan say? Ink released his soul power to sense the token and found a coordinate and a teleportation channel. He immediately nodded with satisfaction and said while suppressing his excitement, after we leave, she will wake up on her own. In the future, the death prison pirates will no longer have any ideas about her. Chen frowned and said, don't tell me you still want me to escort you out of here? Ink smiled and said, although I think so too, I'm sorry, but this time, you don't have the strength to escort us out of here. To the side, sixth young master also smiled at Chen. However, that smile turned extremely cold. Ink put away the token, clasped his hands, and bowed deeply to Chen, saying, Chen, thank you very much this time. The death prison pirates will remember your kindness. Next, I hope you take care of yourself. Following Ink's words, another voice rang out from the city walls. You all saw it, right? He has already surrendered to the death prison pirates. He killed leader Lei Wusheng on the sky stairway and robbed him of his harvest. Now, he has handed it over to the death prison pirate. Lei Zheng Hengtian's figure suddenly appeared and said coldly, what are you all standing there for? Kill him for me.